I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Are the armed forces up to defending Israel against attacks?
Well, the former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace raises questions over Britain's position on the world stage, blaming a lack of military investment.
Well, meanwhile, the new Defence Secretary clarifies that British military jets weren't involved in shooting down Iranian missiles, but were ready to do so.
Well, this comes as President Biden confirms the US will avoid involvement in potential strikes against Iran's nuclear sites as Israel vows to retaliate.
Labour Party donor Lord Ellie is to be investigated by the House of Lords Standards Watchdog as the Prime Minister pays back £6,000 in gifts and donations.
The Conservative Party conference comes to a close. War stories, repeated rhetoric and jail jokes. But who came out on top?
Kate's comeback. The Princess of Wales emotionally embraces a teenager with cancer as she returns to royal duties.
And we love keeping it local, apparently. New research reveals Britons prefer independent businesses over big chains. So, what's your go-to?
And according to new research, the UK is now more atheist than ever. We're asking, is it time to embrace religion once again?
And in the sport, Aston Villa do extremely well. Historic night of the Champions League in front of the Prince of Wales as they beat Bayern Munich. Liverpool beat Bologna at Anfield. And in sailing, well, to cut a long story short, Britain closed in on the Italians.
Make the most of today's widely fine weather. After all the wet, recent conditions that central and southern parts have experienced, it's a welcome respite from the rain. I'll have the full forecast coming up very shortly.
Just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So apparently we all like to shop locally.
Yeah, Brits love to support local independent businesses. 64% of people make it a habit to shop locally at least once a week. I like a nice independent
Depends
shop.
what you mean, I guess, by
So I would say I make an effort to go to independent coffee shops or cafes if I'm going out.
Is that what it means, though, an independent... I don't know. Paul, what do you think? I would have thought more greengrocers.
Yeah, that's what you kind of imagine. But the thing is, there's less and less, aren't there?
That's true.
And it's all about... And when you get people, oh, I'd love to support locals. Of course you would. But then when you've got other ones and they're cheaper, then you're more likely to do that. And I feel bad for doing that, but sometimes you kind of go with which is cheaper.
Cost comes into it, doesn't it?
Of course it
Especially
does.
if you're going to bookshops. If you're going to a nice independent bookshop, you will pay probably double what you'd pay on Amazon.
Yeah.
You should try and support local.
You should really. I mean, I go to the shopping centre and things near us.
Yeah.
And go in there.
They shop at the...
And are there nice independents in there?
There is.
Or are they chains?
There is an independent shop in there that sells local stuff made by local people.
And do you frequent that independent shop?
I do go in.
Local stuff from local people?
I do. I do. I don't often buy anything from there because it's like gift sort of stuff, you know.
I like a hardware store.
Do you?
Yes, I like an old hardware store.
That's a good example.
And you know what? I remember old sports shops when I was a kid, and they have drawers, like the wooden drawers, and they pull up... The thing is, all those are disappearing. And I just like to go in there, you know? It's just a throwback. And more of those shops.
Talking of which, they've put Arkwrights on the market.
Have they?
Yeah. It's a hairdressers now, but they're putting it on... It's gone on the market now. So if you wanted to buy Arkwrights...
So, hold on, was it actually your shop?
Yeah, it's a real shop.
Right. This is open all hours?
Yeah.
Right. So, was it an actual greengrocer's?
No, it's a hairdressers. But before that, it was a hairdresser as well. I think they turned it into a greengrocer.
And did they have Granville with the till?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, nice till. Well, let us know if you like to shop locally. 64% of people like to do so. Cafes or restaurants, the top choices, apparently. 70% of people like to go to an independent cafe or restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd be in that 70%. Independent bakeries or butchers come in at 40%.
You worked in a shop? You worked in a shop?
Yeah, I worked in a cafe.
Yeah.
Called the Rumbling Tum.
Oh, nice. I like the sound of that. Is it still there?
No.
Because my son's going to go and work in a shop. And I said, well, when I worked in a shop, you have to phone, like, the credit cards and you have to test credit, you know, and you have to actually put the numbers in the till. You have to scan things down. It's all much easier. Yeah. But once I worked in a record shop, and Paul Vukhtar, are you familiar with Paul Vukhtar?
No.
He's in Aha. He came in and he bought a copy of The River by Bruce Springsteen, and I was supposed to phone up and check his credit card, and because he was famous, I thought, I think he's good for the money. So I never forgot that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
That's my
Love
story.
the Hart. Maybe even better if it was Morton Hart.
I know, but Morton wasn't there. Yeah.
But I think those first jobs in a cafe or a restaurant or a shop are the making of you.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I think I've learned so much working in restaurants, bars,
Okay.
shops. I worked at a fancy dress shop as well. That was fun. I've done it all.
You have, haven't you?
I actually have.
Right, we better move on, because there's some serious stuff about this morning.
There is, yes.
The former Defence Secretary, Sir Ben Wallace, has said that UK armed forces are not up to defending Israel from missile attacks.
Well, it comes as questions were raised yesterday over the UK's involvement in trying to protect Tehran's 180 missile attack on Israel.
Well, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, initially stated that UK forces played their part to prevent further escalation.
But on a visit to Cyprus yesterday, he said troops didn't engage and instead acted as a wider deterrence.
Well, let's head to North London. We can talk to the director of the Israel Solidarity Movement, Keith Fraser. Keith, good to see you this morning. How important is it, do you think? I mean, I know Israel is an ally, but how important is it that we should have armed forces who are prepared, able and ready to protect Israel from these sort of attacks?
It's very important. I mean, look, the West was, very involved in the defeat of Islamic State. We need to be similar in our approach to Islamic Republic, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to be precise. They, over many years now, have been, with their proxies, building up strength, weaponry, in its aims to defeat the West. In the first instance is to defeat Israel, because Israel is seen as an extension of the West. And, you'll know from Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all their slogans are around the notion of jihad, which is what the Islamic Republic is about. They don't really care about the people in the Palestinian territories. They don't really care about the people of Iran. They care about the spread of Shia Islam and the idea of an Islamic caliphate. Hamas, they are known as the Islamic resistance movement. Hezbollah, the party of Allah. The Houthis' slogan is God is greatest, death to the US, death to Israel, a curse upon Jews and victory to Islam. This is what Iran is spreading around the region. And it won't stop at the region. If Israel is defeated, heaven forbid, that's just the first stop in Iran's attempt to defeat the West. And therefore, the British forces need to be very much part of its war against what is known as the Islamic Republic, in the same way as we were against Islamic State. It's very clear. We've allowed them over many, many years to build up their strength in building up these proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Islamic Jihad, Shia militias in Iraq, etc., etc. It's getting worse. The worst thing that could happen is if Iran get nuclear weapons, then we're all in trouble. So yes, the British have to be involved, and they have to be involved very much to protect our Western freedoms and for the sake of the freedom of the whole world.
You made then on the messaging from the UK government so far in this conflict. I'm talking about the new Labour government in this, because we had David Lammy at the start of September reducing arms licences to Israel, didn't he? He suspended 30 out of those 350 arms exports. So we've got limitations on Israel there, but then we're talking about defending Israel across all of the papers today in this fight against Iran. So the messaging doesn't seem very clear from this government.
Well, absolutely. And look, the Labour Party, I didn't personally vote for them because I never felt that they would be supportive against my community and, of course, Israel. Although Keir Starmer's been very clear about his stance on Iran. But the truth is that the Western world have, if you like, closed their eyes against the threat of Iran. You can see what they're doing in the region. It's not because they hate Israel necessarily, because it's Israel. They hate the West. They hate our way of life. They want to wage jihad on the world. They want to create a Shia Islamic caliphate. So first of all, in the region, which they are effectively doing through their proxies, they're growing stronger. Israel is the first step in its attempt to defeat the West. Britain has to be part of the war against Islamic Republic, in the same way as it was against Islamic State. You cannot defeat the ideology, but you have to take away their capability to destroy us and to wage war on us. And if we don't, we are in trouble. People forget, for example, that Hezbollah prior to 9/11 killed more Westerners than Al-Qaeda. So we have to do what we can to safeguard Israel, yes, because Israel is part of the West. Unfortunately, it's part of the West surrounded by a group of death cult organizations, as we've mentioned, Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad. But that is just the first step. We must, in Britain, help Israel, our allies, if we want to preserve Western freedoms and Western democracy. Otherwise, the world is in trouble.
There will be those people who look at our involvement in these sorts of things. I mean, I know what you're saying about the wider implications, but there are still plenty of people who say, actually, with something like this and something as complex as this, we need to stay out of it now and look after our own.
Well, again, if we stay out of it, the war is coming to our shores. I mean, we've seen only recently a poll of British Muslims where I think something like, was it 32% who wanted Sharia law? You know, what do we want? Do we want more terror attacks here, like the 7/7, 9/11, the Madrid bombings, the car rammings in London Bridge? These are just minor microcosms of what the Islamic Republic of Iran and other Islamic groups, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, etc., want. They want to disrupt our way of life. They hate the West. They hate Western freedoms. And if we don't fight for our freedom, i.e. get involved and fight back, then it's going to get a lot worse. We have to fight back. We have to fight back firmly, because I think our way of life is the best. It's not perfect, but I think it's a lot better than that way of life. I wouldn't want to be somebody living in Iran. I wouldn't want to be married. I wouldn't want my wife to be living in Iran, the way it subjugates women, it subjugates gays, etc., minority groups. I think what our way of life, while not perfect, is a lot better, but we need to preserve it. And if we don't want to get involved, then we don't want to preserve our Western freedoms. It's as simple as that.
OK, Keith Fraser, Director of the Israel Solidarity Movement. Good to talk to you this morning. Now to politics here in the UK, and the party conference season has officially ended.
Yeah, it was brought to a close with the 4 final Conservative leadership candidates turning their main stage speeches into, well, basically an audition for the job of party leader.
While GB News' political editor Christopher Hope reflects on each candidate's performance.
Well, that's it for another year. The conference season is over, ending here in Birmingham with a Conservative Party conference. The members here have been focused on just 4 MPs, of course: Tom Tugendhat, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly. Which of those might succeed Rishi Sunak as the party's leader? I think, for me, James Cleverly ends the week in the best position. He's come through as someone who seems to be have authority. He's stressed his background as a former Home Secretary, former Foreign Secretary, former party chairman. His speeches have been met by partial standing ovations, certainly more ovations than the other 3 candidates. Kemi Badenoch, she's offering almost a Trussite, a Liz Truss-esque revolution in the party to restore its fortunes from as few as 121 MPs to getting near Labour's figure at the next election. Robert Jenrick, I think he did enough to stay in the game. He is still offering a new programme for the new Conservatives, as he called him, sounding very like New Labour back in the 1990s. I think, for me, Tom Tugendhat has fallen away. He's the 4th candidate. He's stressed that he's obviously experienced in the army, his work as security minister. But I'm not sure he did enough, really, for me, to make it into the final 2. MPs vote next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, to get down to the final 2. We'll know who they are on Thursday, and then it's onwards via a GB News TV leadership event on October 17th. We'll know who it is on November the 2nd. But politics starts in earnest back next week when MPs return. Christopher Hope, the Tory conference here in Birmingham.
Well, the Labour peer at the centre of the donations scandal around the government has been placed under investigation by the House of Lords Standards Watchdog.
Yes, Lord Wahid Ali is set to face a probe over what is being called alleged non-registration of interests.
This comes as Downing Street said Sir Keir Starmer had now paid back more than £6,000 received since the election.
Well, a Labour spokesperson has told GB News Lord Ali will cooperate fully with the Lords Commissioner, and he's confident that all interests have been registered. We cannot comment further while this is ongoing.
Let's talk to former Chief of Staff to Naheem Zahawi, James Price, who's here in the studio. Good to see you this morning.
Morning.
Can we kick off, please, with the Tories? Because that's your area of expertise. Where are we in all of this? We've had these auditions at conference. Has anyone really stood out? Or, indeed, has anyone inspired?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's probably a vindication of the length of this leadership contest. It's been going on for quite a long time, and some people said that this is far too long, with Labour making so many mistakes as they have, which I'm relishing talking about in a minute as well. We need a new leader in there to really hold the government's feet to the fire. But actually, the fact that there's no clear front-runner on this right now, the fact that after several days of talking with members and lots of press scrutiny, and efforts as well on the kind of fringes of the Conservative Party conference, where there are lots of think tanks and conversations and debates and panels and all these sorts of things to really flesh out the ideas. The fact that there's no clear frontrunner and lots of difficult things are being discussed and there's kind of clear blue water between the candidates, still wide open. That, I think, vindicates the fact that the Conservative Party needs a long conversation about its future and about the problems facing the country and what we should do about it.
Do you have a clear frontrunner in your mind? And do you think, because you've been at Tory conference this week, haven't you, do you think people have changed their mind listening to all 4 candidates speak?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of going back and forth, and you see sometimes people swapping out the lanyards that say Badenoch and putting on Tugendhat or vice versa, and all kinds of weird tat and stash and merchandise that was being handed around. I think Jenrick went into this as the favourite with the bookies, and Kemi Badenoch went in as the members' favourite, which I think put targets on their backs to some extent. I think that gave an opportunity for Tom Tugendhat and James Cleverly. I think Tugendhat by probably his own admission, really failed to rise on this last morning of the big speeches, and it just fell flat. And he was then followed by James Cleverly, who gave a real barnstorming performance. I think he's really, I think, maybe cemented himself in second place now.
Except his barnstorming performance was basically just criticising reform.
Well,
wasn't it? Now, there's an issue with that because, of course, you need to win back. There's no point saying people reform and those who vote for them are idiots, because you need to win those people back.
And this is part of the problem, that the people who went to party conference, there's a lot of these people, but they're the sort of people who are not so upset or annoyed or frustrated or exhausted with the Conservatives that they still went to this conference. Now, there's still a lot of other party members who can vote in this contest who didn't bother going and maybe deliberately didn't go because of it. So you're right. And I think this highlights the challenge, the strategic challenge that the Conservatives have got. If you're Rob Jenrick, you think, right, the first thing I'm going to do is understand why so many people sat on their hands and didn't go out and vote, or why so many went and voted for reform, win those people back, out Farage, as some people would say, and then perhaps over the next few years tack back into the centre and get the kind of Lib Dem defectors and Labour defectors. But other people say, well, no, I'm too tribal, I'm never going to countenance doing anything with reform, I'm going to bash Farage and hope that will kind of win me the selection of the Tory faithful who are still sticking around. And I suppose we've got a month to see which one of those strategies is going to be vindicated.
But it will be one of the four of them, which is quite an interesting thing to think, isn't it, when you see pictures of the four of them speaking this week?
I think this time next week it'll be down to two.
Yes.
And that'll be when the cutthroat fighting really starts.
Can I ask you about Lord Wahid Ali?
Please do.
Because he's under Lord's investigation now over non-registration of interests.
It's hard to keep up with everything that he's been doing. I mean, fair play to him. The guy's got so much money to be able to keep bailing out Labour MPs and Labour peers and buying people nice suits and glasses and all the rest of it. It's hard to know which one of these is. I think this investigation, there's not been an awful lot of information that's come out about it. One of the problems is, one of the other stories that he's been doing is that he helped buy a house for the sister of a Labour MP who has come out and tweeted saying, sorry, there's nothing to see here, this is just a minor technical declaration of interest issue. I think, well, if you've had your sister be bought a house by this guy and you're an MP and it looks like you might be leaning on this House of Lords investigation, that's not a good look. And then it's come out that he's also bailed out a crossbench member of the House of Lords who was found to have double-dipped. She was saying that she lived in Kent when actually she lived in Tower Hamlets, had to pay back a huge load of money. He's bailed her out. He's given all this money to Starmer. Where does it stop? Where does it end? And, of course, the Prime Minister now has said that he's going to give back £6,000, which is about 5% of all the money he's taken well over six figures in gifts and things. He said, I'm giving back everything that I've been given since I was Prime Minister, apart from my Arsenal tickets.
Now, yeah, but that's quite interesting, I think, in and of itself, because without saying, well, this wasn't right, it's an admission it wasn't right, isn't it?
Well, I think this is the problem. He's a lawyer, as we all know, and therefore he's looking at the technical, legal arguments of some of this. And he's saying, no, it's fine, right? There's obviously a different test from when I was leader of the opposition to Prime Minister, so I'll give this stuff back. Oh, but apart from the Arsenal tickets, because I was doing that anyway and I really love Arsenal, and it's not really costing people that much money because of security concerns, but I'm not going to do it for anybody else. Now, one of the big difficulties for that is if you're a Labour minister or a Labour MP grilled by you guys on these things, and they've had to go out and defend all of it, well, he's now backtracked on it, so you look a bit silly. And as you say, when Rachel Reeves comes out, we're going to ask her if she's going to give back any of her freebies. Is Angela Rayner going to have to give back any of hers? It doesn't put the story to bed, and as you say, it makes it look like he's done at least something wrong. Maybe only 5% of the money is wrong. It's not going to go to bed this yet.
And the timing of this is really interesting as well, because the heat was really on him for the last 2 weeks or so. And as you say, he stuck to his line that he'd done absolutely nothing wrong and it's all been declared and he hadn't done anything illegal. And now he's rowing back, it seems, when it's just starting to die down a little bit.
It's an absolutely extraordinary move, and I don't think it's going to work at all. A lot of us thought, not with the kind of bitterness of the defeated, but like these guys they've won the election on default because people were rightly, fed up with my party, with the Conservatives for a while, and these guys have managed to sneak in. But I don't think any of us expected them to be this amateurish this quickly, just getting straight into the trough.
Yeah, has it been very badly managed from I know spin doctors, PR and all that is, it's a nightmare. I don't necessarily approve, but it's got to be there to a degree. But from that perspective, it's been very badly handled, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Put it into context that normal people would understand, right? If you've got a child who does something wrong, The smart move for a child is to go straight away, yep, you know what, I stole the sweets, I wasn't supposed to do that, I'm really sorry, show contrition, and then you won't be in trouble for as long. The fact if you play it out, you fib to your mum and dad about it, and then you admit defeat, it's much worse. And it feels like that's what's happened. They've been caught with their hands in the sweet tin.
OK. James, good to see you. We'll see you a little bit later on. For now, thanks very much indeed.
Now, at 22 minutes past 6, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Civil servants have voted in favour of strike action amid a row over returning to the office for 2 days a week. No strike dates have been set, but the PCS union can announce industrial action at any point over the next 6 months.
Amanda Abington has claimed that Giovanni Panice allegedly made a shocking sexual gesture at her during rehearsals on Strictly Come Dancing. The actress is now considering further legal action despite an investigation clearing the professional dancer from the most serious allegations made against him.
A doctor charged over the death of Friends star Matthew Perry has pleaded guilty to illegally distributing ketamine. Dr. Mark Chavez could face up to 10 years in prison. He's one of 5 people charged in connection with the star's death.
And the Princess of Wales has been pictured hugging a teenage girl battling cancer upon her return to royal duties. Waleses met with the aspiring photographer suffering from an aggressive form of cancer during a ceremony for sporting heroes. The princess, who has recently completed chemotherapy treatment, is also a keen amateur photographer.
I mean, look, she's back and she's doing it, Grace.
Oh, it's just so
I'm really
lovely,
impressed.
Just so lovely. It just shows her at her very best, I think.
But what's interesting, I wonder if she's taking the lead, whether, I mean, it might just be how she operates, but I wonder if she's also taking the lead slightly from the King, who was, when he went to meet people with cancer and was actually very tactile and lovely, and I don't know, I just think they're all coming into their own now, in spite and in the face of the battles that they've had. It's all really positive stuff.
And it's so nice. It is such a stark change, really, from the late Queen Elizabeth II being so open about their health, hoping to raise awareness, and the warmth and the tactileness that we're seeing. I really like this new chapter.
Yeah, I do.
The royal family. And I think, yeah, it's great.
It had to evolve from how Queen Elizabeth was. It had to evolve, and it's evolving in a nice way.
Yeah, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Right, still to come, new research reveals that we prefer independent businesses to big chains. So do you like keeping it local? We're discussing that in a couple of minutes.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
6:27 now. We Brits are showing a clear preference for local independent businesses, apparently. More than 64% of us making it a habit to shop locally at least once a week.
Yes, cafes or restaurants are the top choices. 70% of consumers are going to them, and independent bakeries or butchers coming in at 40%.
So what do you think? Do you prefer to keep it local, or do you just go where the bargains are? Let's talk to co-founder at Green and Blacks, Joe Fairley. Morning to you, Joe. Are you encouraged by this news, even though it does seem to be predominantly people going out for a coffee?
Absolutely. Well, I founded a global business with Green and Black, but then when we sold that, went on to open a bakery on our high street in Hastings. And I was really able to see firsthand how you can knit a community together when there are places for them to shop locally. And so Metro Bank, which likes to think of itself as a champion of small business, has done some research, and it's come up with figures, I guess, which really confirm everything that I felt in my gut, which is that 4 in 5 say they feel more valued at local shops. They really like the way that a local shopping community can knit the whole community together. And the local employment opportunities as well. So 70% of them say that they really like the way that local shops employ local people, and it keeps it all local. And, you know, I used to walk down the street saying hello to people. Hello, Mrs. Flippants, hello, Prue. And my husband would say to me, how do you know that person? I'd go, from standing behind the counter in the bakery. And I can not only tell you their name, but I know that Prue likes a donut and Mrs. Flippants likes the darkest loaf coming out of the oven. And that is the kind of thing that chains really can't offer. So I'm not surprised we respond.
And it seems as well, Joe, that British people really appreciate a local shop as well, and not even just appreciate it. They go out of their way to try and find one when they're on the high street. If there was a choice between a chain or an independent, many people would actively seek out an independent coffee shop or an independent shop. Do you think it is that community connection that keeps them going in, or do you think it might be something else?
I think that in a world that feels really scary, you wake up and you're covering all kinds of news stories that really are out of our control. We sit at home, we feel powerless. Every time we spend £1, we have a vote for the kind of world that we want to live in. And somehow it feels like we're taking back control, I think, when we actually vote with our money on a daily basis. You get an election every 4 years, but every time you go into a bakery and you've got a choice between a chain and you've got a choice between that family bakery that's been there since 1826, you're voting with that quid. And I think that we've had, millions of years of close human contact. We live in a world now where we relate to people through our screens and through our phones. And actually, that hasn't erased that deep human need for connection, which I think you get when you visit a shop regularly and when they smile at you and they know it's your birthday, or how did the cake go that you bought for last week's celebration? That's irreplaceable.
It's all well and good, except we've got to accept, haven't we, that this is the high street evolving, actually, rather than going back to something old-fashioned, in that we are talking about here coffee shops, we're talking about bakeries. I mean, you don't get sort of chain bakeries on the high street. We're talking about butchers. What we're not talking about is your everyday wares, if you like, which is the majority of our shopping, which people are doing elsewhere. So we seem to be going into a niche local market.
I think realistically, most people probably do a large part of their shopping at a supermarket, and it's fantastically convenient, etc. But there are things that we can buy on a daily basis that really make a difference to the livelihood of those local shoppers and to that community spirit. So I think, you know, we're not asking people to go down to back to dark ages where you walk down the high street with a basket under your arm and you bought your leek here and your loaf there. But actually, there is something that we can do every day to knit that community together by supporting the local retailers.
For people, isn't it? Especially, you know, cost of living crisis. Things are very expensive out there, especially for pensioners now with their loss of winter fuel payments. It's going to be tough for people this winter. Even if you'd like to shop independently, for many people, it's not an option.
Well, I've always been a great exponent of buy less and buy better and actually buy what you need. And I think there is a risk when you go to a supermarket that you fill your fridge with stuff that's gone off by next Saturday when you go again. And actually, when you're shopping little and often on your way home, you know, on the way to work in the morning, you buy exactly what you're going to need and you don't waste so much. And I'm very anti-waste as well.
Jo, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
If people would like to find out more, Metro Bank, Google Metro Bank or metrobankonline.co.uk, because it is a really interesting survey.
Okay. Thanks, Jo. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Right, shall we see what the weather's going to do for you today? Here's Aidan.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. North East Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, some good news this morning. You still have plenty of time to grab an autumn cash boost, an incredible £36,000 in cash.
It's the biggest cash prize, the cash prize of the year so far, and it could all be yours. Here's how.
There's still
the latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lancashire, Squiresgate Lane near Blackpool Airport is closed each way off the A584 Star Gate because of an investigation. The M54 in Staffordshire, the slip roads are closed westbound at Junction 1, the Wolverhampton and Cannock turn for emergency repairs. The M40 in Oxfordshire is closed southbound from Junction 11 at Banbury to 10 at Brackley, where overnight roadworks have overrun. There are roughly 3 miles of queues towards there. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed in both directions between the A6 at the Marshalleys roundabout at Kempston and Junction 13 of the M1 near Bedford because of flooding, and Thameslink train services aren't running between Crystal Palace and London Bridge via New Cross, and that's because of a faulty rail. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, the first thing on in my mind when I heard about this is, what has this country come to when we're talking about getting kids as young as 6 years old to be jabbed weekly or however often it is because they are too fat? Where are the parents in all of this? There's 3 things actually here that are important. Number one is we do not know the long-term consequences of these jabs. So if I had a child and I was going to let them have the jab, I would be feeling like I'm treating them like a lab rat, to be quite honest with you, because we don't know the long-term consequences. Secondly, the manufacturers are clear that some of the potential side effects can be very serious. We're talking about potentially pancreatitis, let's get my word out, and also it lists as a potential side effect thyroid cancer. Arguably, it's called the gamble jab, to be honest with you, because of these potential side effects at the moment. And then thirdly, I come back to the parents. Where are the parents in all of this? Because they are the role models. So it really is about parenting, and it's about parenting from being a role model yourself in terms of being slim and healthy and not expecting a jab to take your place and other people to take your place. If you have children, they are your responsibility. Think before you breed. The other thing you need to remember with this is when you stop taking that jab, it is highly likely that you're going to put all the weight back on. Now, the thought of a child of 6 years of age, starting with that jab, conditioning them mentally to live with that jab, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Should we have a look at the sport?
I think we should.
Oh, Paul Coit.
I'm not in the mood for the sport right now.
What should we do then?
No, let's do the sport. Aston Villa, I tell you, Aston Villa were great last night. So it's been 42 years since they were in the Champions League, although the European Cup as it was back in the day. 1982, they won it in Rotterdam when they beat Bayern Munich, and they had the old heroes of 82 were paraded out at Villa Park yesterday. Really? Yeah, which is lovely. And they're playing Bayern Munich again. And Bayern Munich, who, well, we know how good Bayern Munich are. And also this season, they've been amazing and they're just scoring goals for fun. And you're thinking, Aston Villa, how's it going to go? And Aston Villa won 1-0. And it was a fantastic result. And the whole of Villa Park's gone bananas. And Prince William was there because he's a huge Aston Villa fan. And there's Emi Martinez. He made very important saves right at the very end of the game, because although they'd gone one up, and it was John Duran, there's Harry, not too happy there, Harry Kane there on the left-hand side. John Duran is a super sub, and he came on, and there was one old super sub from back in the day, back in the 70s, was a fellow called David Fairclough, who played for Liverpool. And during European competition, he would come off the bench and then often score the winning goal, but he was super sub, and he obviously just wanted to play.
Cole Palmer of his time.
That's exactly, yeah. And so now John Duran, he's played 9 games for Aston Villa, started only 1, and he scored 6 goals. Obviously, he wants to start these games, but it works for them. 79th minute, scored the winner, and it was a fantastic goal as well.
Brilliant.
Shall we hear from Unai Emery?
Oh, yes.
Shall we? Unai Emery, the Aston Villa manager. You know, people have a go at Unai about his English. Right. It might be slightly difficult to understand. We're not going to go down that line. But if you need subtitles, maybe we'll help you. Here's Unai.
When John Duran received the ball, he was scoring quick because in the analysis we did of then, we were speaking a lot about how is usually the position of Neuer always high. And really, I just spoke with my coach assist about how he shoot, because he had in his mind this possibility with Neuer. Yes.
1970s sitcom.
I'm lost. Can you translate for us?
Yes. What he's trying to say is that how he shoot and John Duran and assistance. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that
makes sense?
Well.
Yeah, very well. You know what? We take the mickey out of him, and he got a lot of stick when he was at Arsenal because he came in at Arsenal and it didn't work out. I mean, he still got him to European final. He's got great reputation in European football. He has turned Aston Villa around.
As long as the footballers could understand it, that's all that matters.
I think
And clearly they are.
I think maybe that's the answer, because they're just going, I'm not sure what he said. Did you get what he said? Oh, we'll just go out and do our own thing. And it seems to be working. But no, he's a fantastic manager. Whereas Vincent Kompany, who was the Burnley manager, and it's a strange decision that he's gone to Bayern Munich, I think he was outthought by the more wily Unai Emery yesterday. But a fantastic result for Aston Villa. So everybody's very happy.
Quick look at tonight.
Do you want to do tonight, or should we do... I've got a little bit of last night.
Well, go on then.
Spurs
are quick.
OK, Liverpool beat Bologna 2-0. Lille, not Lille as in, hello, Lille, it's Lille is in France, managed to beat Real Madrid. Real Madrid, 36-game unbeaten run, came to an end as Lille beat them yesterday in the Champions League. So it was all very good.
Lovely. Right,
Thank you,
too much time on Unai Emery, wasn't it? I apologise.
Well, it was very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Do stay with us still to come. The UK is going to open a prison in Albania as part of a £4 million a year deal to reduce overcrowding at prisons in home. We'll tell you more after this.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come on. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play...
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonator?
That is, yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of... In recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And, as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
Do you remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry in this story because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference to me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
6:48, time for the papers this morning with the podcaster Lewis Oakley and the author and journalist Susan Holder. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Susan,
Morning.
we teased this. Can we have a look at the Telegraph?
Yes.
We're paying a lot of money to have prisons in Albania now.
We are, but the argument I think that they're putting forward in this piece in the Telegraph is that it will save us money in the long run. And also, did you know that 1 in 7 of the 10,500 foreign prisoners we have in this country is Albanian? So they're the biggest cohort. So what we are doing is giving money to Albania to fund this new prison, and they get sent over there. It says for the last 6 months of their sentences, but they are, the 200 prisoners that are concerned include murderers, rapists and drug dealers. So I'm just wondering, it doesn't tell me in this article in the Telegraph, but how long have we had them here that we're paying for them and then they get the last 6 months over there? I'm not sure.
But we'll still be paying for them over there, will we?
We're paying for the project for the prison to be kind of constructed, and we're paying for various things that kind of go into it. But at the moment, and again, it raises more questions than it answers this, the cost of foreign inmates in our jails is £52,000 per person. But £52,000 per person, what? A day? A year? 10 years? It doesn't say. It will be a year, but it doesn't say that, and I'd like that kind of to be clarified. But yes, and it's a new open prison, and obviously the way they've written it is it's inmates will have their own rooms set in a terrace-style street with freedom to come and go.
Yeah, it's a really oddly article, and some of the details I think we need more. Yeah. I would want to know a little bit more about, is it easier then to send them over to the last bit of the sentence and then they can't really come back? Is that more the idea of what we're doing it? Because then you've got people coming out of prison.
Well, we do have a deal with Albania, don't we? We do have that kind of deal. We have got that going with Albania.
Oh, well, that's good then.
Lewis, should we look at this story? It's on the Mail Online. It's about Melania Trump defending abortion rights.
Yeah, so Melania Trump has got a forthcoming memoir out, and the Mail have seen an early copy of it, and she said that she's carried the belief her entire adult life that it is a woman's right to choose, which obviously puts her a bit at odds with Donald Trump and his views, although his views have been shifting because in August, Trump told the Mail Online that he would vote to end Florida's draconian 6-week abortion ban when it came up for referendum later in the year. And then a few days later, he was telling an anti-abortion wing of the party that he wouldn't vote to overturn it. So he's flip-flopped. She's got kind of a firm position. And I guess the thing about this is, other than trying to promote Melania's book, it kind of shows that you can have in families really different views on things and still...
Well, yeah, but what's interesting, of course, is, I mean, we're only a few weeks away from the election where abortion, as is always the case in the States, is actually a big election issue.
Yep.
And it's either if you're against it, you vote Republican, if you're for it, you vote Democrat.
Yes, and as we were just talking about this before, and the kind of what we kind of conclusion we came to is that actually Trump doesn't really care one way or another that much about it. He'll say whatever he thinks is going to kind of win the votes or please the people this way and another. And the overturning of Roe versus Wade was more to do with the constitutional situation, is my understanding, rather than his belief that abortion is wrong, which is... So there's room for manoeuvre on his opinion, but as a woman, I just think that whole rollback in America so that now different states can decide on abortion rules is just so terrifying for women, because it is taking kind of that position that women had more autonomy over their bodies back to other people to decide for them, which, you know, as a woman, I don't agree with, but...
But you're right, Stephen. It is always a big election issue, and this year will be even bigger because of all of the movement there. So Harris is is obviously pro-choice. Trump's still struggling to find a position. So it remains to be seen how big of an issue this will become in the next month, because we've only got a month until the election.
But good on Melania for stating her case, though. Actually, I have to say I'm quite surprised and also quite pleased to see that she's put down what she believes, and that's what people should do. And whether you agree or don't agree, that is what people should do, isn't it? And she's done that, and so good on her, actually.
Can we talk about Princess Catherine, please?
Yeah, this is a really nice story. So she has been pictured for the first time back at work. She invited Liz Hatton, who's 16, to take pictures of an event they were hosting at Windsor Castle. It's a beautiful story, back at work. Slightly sad because this poor girl has been given between 6 months and 3 years to live, but she's been able to go and take these pictures and meet Kate, and Prince William was really inspired by her story. So, you know, I think we can expect them to do more of this kind of work where they're really profiling some of the great work people are doing in that cancer space.
And it's come about because Prince William got to know about this girl's story through the air ambulance, which, of course, he's very attached to. So, yeah, that kind of thing is... But it is heartbreaking story, kind of in many ways. But great to see Kate back at work.
I always think when people are given that, a time frame
not helpful necessarily.
Well, in some respects it's not helpful, but in other respects you shouldn't write them off.
No, absolutely not.
And actually just allow people to live their lives.
Yeah, and she's got a bucket, and what she's trying to do is kind of have as many photographic experiences as possible. So she took pictures of the investiture as part of that, which would have been a great kind of thing to do, and a great opportunity for her. So hopefully she'll get more of things like that to do. And now her profile is there, maybe more people will invite her to do different things around the country, which would be great for her.
Let's hope so.
You've just got to keep going, haven't you? I mean, I always think Stephen Sutton was the key example on that, who just would not let it get him down. Frankly, not until the day he went.
No, and the problem with that is we all kind of thought, didn't we, with Stephen Sutton, it'll be all right, and unfortunately it wasn't.
It was the same for me with Shannon Doherty, who obviously battled it for almost 10 years, and I was listening to her podcast.
Right. Sadly, we're out of time. We'll finish that story later. Thanks both. Let's have a look at the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south-east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. Northeast Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lancashire, Squiersgate Lane by Blackpool Airport is closed off the A584 for an investigation. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, the inside lane's closed westbound, where a lorry's broken down between junctions 20 and 19 from Rochdale to Hayward. The M40 in Oxfordshire has reopened southbound from junction 11 at Banbury to 10 at Brackley, where overnight roadworks overran earlier. Still queues towards there, though, and there are also queues on the A422 approaching the A43 south of Brackley, where you've been diverting. In Bedfordshire, the A421 is closed each way between the A6 and M1 near Bedford because of flooding, and Thameslink train services aren't running between Crystal Palace and London Bridge, with reduced service on a number of other routes, and that is because of a faulty rail at New Cross Gate. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Are the armed forces up to defending Israel against attacks?
Well, former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace raises questions about Britain's position on the world stage, blaming a lack of military investment.
Well, meanwhile, John Healey, the current Defence Secretary, has clarified that British military jets weren't involved in shooting down Iranian missiles, but were ready to do so.
Well, this comes as President Biden confirms the US will avoid involvement in potential strikes against Iran's nuclear sites as Israel vows to retaliate.
Labour Party donor Lord Alley is to be investigated by the House of Lords Standards watchdog as the Prime Minister pays back £6,000 in gifts and donations.
The Conservative Party conference comes to a close. War stories, repeated rhetoric and jail jokes. But who came out on top?
Catherine's comeback. The Princess of Wales embraces a teenager with cancer as she returns to royal duties.
According to new research, the UK is now more atheist than ever. We're asking this morning, is it time to embrace religion once again?
An historic night for Aston Villa in the Champions League in front of the Prince of Wales as they beat Bayern Munich. Liverpool beat Bologna at Anfield, and in sailing, to cut a long story short, Britain close in on the Italians and our first America's Cup since 1964.
Make the most of today's widely fine weather after all the wet recent conditions that central and southern parts have experienced. It's a welcome respite from the rain. I'll have the full forecast coming up very shortly.
Just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Paul needs to
I need to clarify something.
Go on.
I did say our first America's Cup since 1964. It's the first time we've actually been in the America's Cup since 1964. Britain have never actually won the America's Cup, and it's been going since 1851.
Oh, well, good for us.
I mean, really, why do we bother?
Well,
I mean, if we've never won it,
well,
why
that's
do we
a
bother?
terrible attitude to have, Mr. Dixon. It is, and if we win it, it is another historic moment.
Well, it is an historic
moment. It is an historic moment, yeah.
Loads of you getting in touch on local shopping. John says it's because of prices. I only use local shops in an emergency.
Adrian says, it's a lot more expensive, isn't it? Adrian says, we've got local greengrocers that sells meat, bread and cakes because most of the retailers here are barbers, estate agents and charity shops. Takeaways, no butchers and no bakers. You have to shop local. That's a good point, Azzy. I think
That's a
your
grocers. That's
point.
not greengrocers. Because a greengrocers is going to be, vegetables.
Veggies and fruits,
Whereas
yeah.
a grocers is going to be the other things, which is what they sell. So therefore, am I being pedantic here?
No.
I'd apologise.
It's not.
But it is a grocers.
It's your tins and your...
Yeah, that's a grocers. Not a greengrocers.
But the point that Adrian's making is the high street's changing, right?
It is.
Mine's exactly the same. Barbers, estate agents, charity shops. There's not shops
Yeah.
like there used to be.
Nicholas says, I shop locally rather than chains because there's a better range.
Oh.
I'm surprised at that. He says, I'm fortunate that I have a local butcher and fishmonger. I can get ox kidneys at the butcher's, undyed smoked haddock at the fishmonger, neither of which you can get at the local supermarket.
Stephen, not this Stephen, different Stephen, says the overheads and business rates are so high for high street independents that it just can't survive. I've used butchers and bakers, which are now closed. I've been forced back to the supermarkets.
Yeah. I have to say, local bakeries are lovely, but it is expensive.
They
The bread
are
is
expensive.
amazing, but it is expensive.
The amount of local ones, and also there was a local bakery near me, and you walk past and the smell would be lovely, you get the fresh bread.
Yeah.
And guess what that is now? An estate agent. It's a bakery. And there's even signs that the bakery been there for like 100, 150 years, now another estate agent.
Oh, I love a bakery.
Sad.
But it's, if people aren't using them, they are going to go, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. Well, do keep your views coming in. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Oh, we're talking about religion later on. Billy says, religion, it's another form of control. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't know. I don't know. And on armed forces, which we're going to talk about in just a second, Brian says armed forces couldn't support Britain. So why are we looking at supporting other countries? And it's a valid question, because the former Defence Secretary, Sir Ben Wallace, has said that the UK armed forces are not up to defending Israel from missile attacks.
Well, it comes as questions were raised yesterday over the UK's involvement in trying to prevent Tehran's 180 missile attack on Israel.
Well, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, had initially stated that UK forces played their part to prevent further escalation.
But then on a visit to Cyprus yesterday, he said that troops didn't engage and instead acted as a wider deterrence.
Let's talk to journalist Charlie Faulkner, who's in Beirut. And Charlie, I mean, look, it's slightly mixed messages coming out of Labour. The former Defence Secretary saying, we haven't got the strength to really play our role. I guess the big question is whether we should be playing that role, whether we should be a big player on the international stage now.
I mean, I'm not sure that's a question that I can answer. I can just tell you really about how the situation is here in Lebanon. And, things are definitely getting quite scary. Last night we had further strikes on Beirut, and there was actually a second strike on the centre of the city, very near to the Parliament building. Videos show a huge fireball as a result of the Israeli strike. And again, today in the south of Lebanon, residents have been told not to return to their houses. These people were told to evacuate yesterday. We're talking about something like nearly 30 villages in the south that have been told to evacuate. Residents that I spoke to through the south were telling me yesterday that they are absolutely terrified about the Israeli troops being inside Lebanon, and their biggest fear is that actually it won't be this sort of limited operation, and that what we'll end up seeing is a much bigger war, and essentially that there'll be that the Israelis will be here for an extended period.
Isn't it, Charlie? Because we're coming very close now to the first anniversary of the war in Gaza after the horrific October the 7th attacks. And we know that Israel moved into Gaza to try and get rid of Hamas. That hasn't happened. Hamas is still there in Gaza. And that there must be fears in Lebanon that Hezbollah, they are a part of Lebanese society, aren't they? And there will be innocent people in Lebanon who are caught up in all of this.
Yes, absolutely. I've been speaking to families. I've been speaking to children in hospitals who've been very badly injured. There are something like 1 million people who've been displaced now because of the recent escalation in the conflict. And all around Beirut, we've got people having to sleep on the streets, who are struggling, to even find shelter at the moment because they're so caught up in this conflict. And these are innocent civilians that we're seeing who are being killed, being injured, and who are having to leave their homes. I mean, a gentleman that I spoke to yesterday, he broke down in tears just about, the absolute heartbreak at having to leave his family home, unknowing whether it would still be standing when he could eventually return back to it. And his house is in the suburbs of Sur, sort of a bit further, more towards the south, but we're not talking about sort of in the deep south where the Israeli troops are at the moment.
Well, look, the big question with that is, I know it's difficult, but are people like that gentleman blaming Israel because obviously they are behind the attacks? Or are they blaming Hezbollah for actually creating this situation in the first place? They've been bombarding Israel continually for a very, very long time. And this is ultimately the consequence of that, isn't it?
Responses really range from what people are thinking here. I mean, absolutely, there is no question that there is a huge amount of anger towards Israel. And there are mixed responses around what people are feeling about towards Hezbollah. I mean, absolutely, some people, are really fed up. Some people absolutely support them. And, I think there's also a feeling that there's maybe been some sort of underestimating of Israel and what actually could happen here in Lebanon. So I think that the feeling amongst people is really sort of right along the spectrum in terms of who they're blaming and how they're feeling towards Hezbollah at the moment.
Charlie Faulkner, live for us there in Beirut. Thank you very much. Now to politics here in the UK, and the party conference season has officially ended.
It was brought to a close with the final four Conservative leadership candidates turning their main stage speeches into an audition for the top job of party leader.
Well, our political editor Christopher Hope reflects on each of their performance.
That's it for another year. The conference season is over, ending here in Birmingham with a Conservative Party conference. The members here have been focused on just four MPs, of course, Tom Tugendhat, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly. Which of those might succeed Rishi Sunak as the party's leader? I think, for me, James Cleverly ends the week in the best position. He's come through as someone who seems to be have authority. He's stressed his background as a former Home Secretary, former Foreign Secretary, former party chairman. His speeches have been met by partial standing ovations, certainly more ovations than the other three candidates. Kemi Badenoch, she's offering almost a Trussite, a Liz Truss-esque revolution in the party to restore its fortunes from as few as 121 MPs to getting near Labour's figure at the next election. Robert Jenrick, I think he did enough to stay in the game. He is still offering a new programme for the new Conservatives, as he called him, sounding very like New Labour back in the 1990s. I think, for me, Tom Tugendhat has fallen away. He's the fourth candidate. He's stressed that he's obviously experienced in the army and his work as security minister. But I'm not sure he did enough, really, for me, to make it into the final two. MPs vote next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, to get down to the final two. We'll know who they are on Thursday, and then it's onwards via a GB News TV leadership event on October 17th. We'll know who it is on November the 2nd. But politics starts in earnest back next week when MPs return. Christopher Hope, the Tory conference here in Birmingham.
Oh, dear me. It's a very difficult one for the Tories, all of this. I just don't know what people are going to decide when it gets down to the final two, whoever that final two is. Meanwhile, I mean, look, it's a huge headache for them, but there's plenty of headaches for the government as well, because the Labour peer at the centre of the government's donation scandal is now under investigation by the House of Lords Standards Watchdog.
Yes, Lord Wahid Ali is set to face a probe over what is being called alleged non-registration of interests.
This comes as Downing Street said Sir Keir Starmer had paid back more than £6,000 that he got since the election.
Well, a Labour spokesperson has told GB News that Lord Ali will cooperate fully with the Lords Commissioner, and he is confident that all interests have been registered. We cannot comment further while this is ongoing.
Let's talk to former Chief of Staff to Nadeem Zahawi, James Price. I mean, you must be rubbing your hands in glee, James, at all this hoo-ha, because it is... I mean, it smacks of sleaze because money's involved. This is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, on one level, it's really upsetting. The world is in a very dangerous place. We've seen all the tensions in the Middle East and more abroad. We've seen all the kind of structural problems that the country is facing, that Europe is facing, the West is facing, and so on. And it'd be great to have a government with a big majority and lots of energy and lots of ideas coming in to fix it. It turns out that this new government has a big majority, but it's got no energy and no ideas. And so it gets caught up in all these kinds of scandals. And there's structural problems that they've got that we haven't even got on to talking about because all of this kind of sleaze stuff is so nasty. Something like the winter fuel payments has knocked off the headlines. And that itself is something that wasn't even going to raise very much money for a lot of fear and a lot of hurt. And it's a kind of civil service idea that if they're already clutching at those sorts of straws, all that time spent in opposition, what on earth were they planning for? It turns out all they were really planning for was to get their snouts in the same trough as everybody else, and that's looking like what has happened.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer started to row back, hasn't he, on the gifting row? So he's repaid £6,000 for gifts and hospitality. So this is some Taylor Swift tickets and rented clothes for his wife. Is that going to do enough, do you think, in the eyes of the public?
I can't imagine a world in which people go, oh, fair enough then, right? Of the £100-and-something thousand that he's got, he's going to give back £6,000 of it, which, by the time he's been in office, is something like 500 quid a week. He's only been in there since July, and already you get in. The first thing you do, right, what am I going to do? Am I going to restructure the economy? Am I going to sort out the civil service? Am I going to show lots of support for our allies in dangerous parts of the world? Nope, I'm going to go to Taylor Swift. I'm going to have someone pay for the tickets for me in some clothes that someone has bought for me and in my wife in some clothes that someone has bought for her. It's absolutely bizarre. And if Labour think that this is going to be the end of the story, they've got another thing coming. What about Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor? Is she going to have to give any of this stuff back? Is she somehow, less corruptible than Starmer worries he himself now is? What about Angela Rayner? She's been sent off to Ibiza on freebies and to New York on a freebie and all these things. And this idea that it's OK when they're in opposition but not in government, that's a lawyer's answer, not a leader's one, I fear.
All right, part of the problem with all of this is that they're not being held to account. That will change come November because there will be a new leader of the Conservative Party. Whoever it is, how much strength are they actually going to have? Because certainly I know they've got, 100 and whatever it is MPs these days. So, there is a body of force there, but they haven't got any sort of real mandate from the public even to act as the real opposition, have they? Not when you look at the passion behind reform, for example.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be difficult. I think that the mood at the recent Conservative Party conference, you heard Chris Hope talking about it there, was surprisingly buoyant. They kind of see it's not so easy after all, is it? Pointing fingers over at the new government. That will dissipate after a sort of honeymoon period that I hope that the new leader gets, because it's going to be a very long 4 years, a long 4 years in opposition with 121 MPs. There's barely enough people to cover all the shadow positions, to shadow all the government ministers. That's going to be very difficult. As you say, there's reform in there, throwing grenades as well. And if the right can't get some kind of compact, some kind of deal, some kind of agreement, or if the Conservatives can't kind of re-cannibalise that reform vote, it's going to spend a lot of time squabbling amongst the right. And I think that when it comes down to any of the substance between what right-wing parties in this country, the Conservatives, Reform, need to say and do, there's a cigarette paper between them. I think it's exactly the same sort of stuff. It's going to have to be sourcing out the economy so that growth can actually get going again, because if we've got growth in the economy, we've got money to spend on public services, we've got money that people can keep in their pockets, they can start saving again. And after the end of this kind of long Labour administration, we're going to need that growth more than ever, because they're going to squander this money. They're not going to invest it very sensibly. Labour, I fear as well, are not going to do the kind of big structural reforms that I keep banging on about whenever you have me on, which is that the civil service is just not really capable of fixing the big structural problems that we've got. Now, those are a tall order for any opposition party to get ready, and it's going to be a long, difficult task for whoever does win this leadership contest for the Tories.
Certainly is. Did you get a sense, James, whilst you were at Tory conference this week, of what the Conservative Party looks like now? Who is it made up of? Because there are only 121 MPs left, and the biggest challenge for the next leader will be in what direction do they steer this party? Do they head towards the centre, away from reform, or do they start to try and nip at reform's heels?
It's a good question. I think that the smart move will be, for whoever wins, is to try and break out of that kind of way of thinking, though. I think there's some reporting out from a think tank called Onward that says that actually immigration was the #1 issue for Conservative voters and Reform voters and Lib Dem voters even, and for lots of Labour voters too, and certainly for all the people who switched from the Tories to Labour and the Lib Dems and Reform, it was the #1 issue. So the idea that it's the central take not to do something about immigration, which has just absolutely skyrocketed. I think that 1 in 30 people in the UK right now have come here in the last 2.5 years or so. Just an extraordinary number, and that's something, fixing that and pledging to do it. Someone like Rob Jenrick has said we'll have a vote on it as soon as we're in Parliament in power again, to hold our feet to the fire on it, rather than all the empty promises we've had in the past, to try and regain some trust. That could be a really interesting way to do it, that would appeal to people, whether they're Reform supporters, whether they're Tories or Lib Dems or Labour. So there is a chance to find these sorts of issues that everybody believes in. And again, I think with the start we've seen Labour have, there's going to be so many of these issues that are going to unite the country against them. There is a real opportunity for some parties to make ground in the next election.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, that's an interesting example because it goes across a whole load of areas. But it's whether someone is going to concentrate on winning back those people who didn't vote, winning back those people who voted Reform, or winning back those people who voted Lib Dem or Labour. Because they're 3 separate groups, really, and it's about prioritising, isn't it?
Well, I think that's, again, the received wisdom. I think that most people, certainly people watching at home, whichever parties they voted for, they want to see strong borders. No one's really against that. They want to see a growing economy. I think there's a growing realisation that the NHS doesn't really work and that there are too many regulations and not enough stuff being built. Certainly the stuff that does get built, whether it's houses or infrastructure, it's not exactly beautiful. We're not building the city of Bath over again, which people wouldn't mind if we did, perhaps. So I think there are lots and lots of issues, not just immigration, but on the economy and other things that can get people going again. And something like, you know, again, Jenrick has tried to talk about English patriotism and British as well as slightly distinct from it. But if you could get someone who could capture some of that, and James Cleverly was very good at trying to make people say, let's be normal again, let's have some of that sunny optimism of someone like Ronald Reagan. If someone can kind of capture that, I think they can bring together people who are Lib Dem voters and Reform and all the rest.
So who's your money on? For getting to the final 2,
the final 2, I think it's going to be Rob Jenrick and James Cleverly. That's what the bookies seem to think, and that's what the energy in conference seem to feel like.
And do you think it could be a tight race between them?
I think so. I think it's really wide open because, again, it's sort of two different visions. But James Cleverly is a great guy. You know, he and I hosted a James dinner a few months ago. We had 30-odd Jameses together for dinner to raise money for charity. And, you know, he's one of the most charismatic, fun people going, and he's telling that very Reagan-esque story. It could be morning again in Great Britain, whereas Jenrick has got very detailed policy ideas already of the problems that he's had. And you say, you know, some people don't believe his kind of conversion more to the right, but he says, look, I went into the Home Office, you see the horrors that you get in the Home Office. It's all about, you know, the kind of worst criminals and terrorists and things like that, and it changes you. You'd also say that he was radicalised his time in the housing department because we're not building nearly enough houses, and those that we are being gobbled up by the fact that we've been increasing our population with mass immigration too much. So it's a very, very detailed policy focus versus everything's going to be all right, and that's going to make for a really fun contest, I think.
Well, fun.
Fun to people like me.
Fun for you.
James, right, good to see you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Let us know what you think. Who would your money go on? gbnews.com/you'll say.
Let's have a look at the weather now with Aidan McGibbon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south-east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. Northeast Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, you still have plenty of time to grab an autumn cash boost, an incredible £36,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest prize of the year so far, and it could be yours. Here's how.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, new research has revealed there are more atheists in the UK than people who believe in God.
Queen's University Belfast surveyed more than 25,000 people across 6 countries to find out why people are turning their backs on religion.
So we're asking this morning, is it time that we embrace religion, especially when it's such a precarious political time?
Let's talk to the Director of Affinity Gospel Churches in Partnership, Graham Nichols, and Wales Coordinator at Humanists UK, Kathy Riddick. Good to see you both this morning. Graham, we've got to ask, I guess, to begin, why you think people are losing faith with religion?
Well, I think it's
just to do with the survey itself. I mean, it is a large survey, but I'm not sure it's sort of nuanced enough as to quite what's going on. I think there is a decline in kind of state religion and nominal Christianity in this country. I think actually sincere Christianity is on the rise. It's actually growing. But I think at a sort of sociological level, there's lots of onslaughts to religion. There's lots of suffering in the world, which raises legitimate questions. There's the whole kind of the sense that we can explain our existence, sort of starting with the rise of evolution, Charles Darwin and everything. So there are loads of kind of push factors that might be pushing it out. But actually my experience on the ground is that it's not on the decline. There's loads of spiritual hunger, loads of people who are interested in Christianity, loads of people wandering into churches actually, rather than us having to go out. So I'm not sure at an experiential level we're sort of on the decline. I think the survey just reflects the reality that for a long time we've been a post-Christian society.
What do you make of this? What do you make of the research? Why do you think so many people are turning their backs on religion?
Sorry, was that a question for me again? Sorry.
No, that's for Kathy.
Yeah.
I think the survey shows us what we see in the census and what we've seen in many other polls over the last 20, 30 years, that there's just a growth in the non-religious. People aren't feeling a need for religion in their lives. They're finding their own sense of meaning and purpose, and that's not impacting on morality or values in any way, but that they don't need that organised sense of a religion. They find that non-religious way of life, where you find sense and meaning in other people and your own community, is enough.
In terms of that, Graham, that's quite encouraging in a sense, isn't it? I mean, not from a Christian point of view, but the idea that perhaps if people are finding their own way without, as Kathy said, any drop in sort of moral levels, well, that's at least something to be encouraged about.
Yeah, definitely, and it's great that people find significance in community, and as Christians we want to encourage community and respect everybody, so there's nothing bad about any of those things. I think there's two things to say very quickly. One is that we're still actually living off our Christian heritage, so although we're a post-Christian country in terms of our actual kind of beliefs, we're not post-Christian in terms of morality or actually lots of things to do with community and society. We're still kind of living off the fruit, although we're kind of trying to get rid of the root of that. So morality doesn't just come out of thin air, and it's not derived in community. It actually comes from our Christian heritage and from other religious heritages as well. So I think that's sort of one thing to say. But the other thing to say is whether or not it's on the rise or on the fall. The big question is whether it's true or not. And I just encourage people to search for the truth. So I'm not so worried about whether we're less than half, more than half, 10%. The question is what we're promoting true? And if it's true, we want people to know about it. So we're sad that 90% of the people in this country aren't going to church or whatever it is.
Kathy, what do you make of that? Do you think that we still live off, our culture is very much still of Christian values?
There's certainly an element of culture. The history, a lot of the history of this country is Christian, admittedly, but morality and values existed before Christianity, and they exist in many other cultures around the world where Christianity doesn't exist. So I don't think they can claim a monopoly on morality, or that's where the source of it comes from. Within humanism, we look for the good in people. We look to act for everyone, think for ourselves, but act for everyone, and make sure that we're leaving the world a better place for those who come after us. I think that's a very basic sense of morality that everybody can share, regardless of whether they're religious or not. Yeah,
well, yes. I do wonder, though, whether that in itself is a form of religion. I mean, it's an organisation, a way of life, an attitude. Isn't that, in a sense, in a loose sense, a form of religion?
I don't think so. I think religion has much more in terms of a structure, in terms of a leader or a text that it bases itself on. And humanism is much more a group of individuals who follow a certain way of life. We have one rule that binds us together, which is treat others the way you want to be treated. We don't claim to own that. We know that a lot of religions have that same rule. We don't have a set of commandments. And there's no structure in terms of prayers and services that humanists would attend. It gives people to live that freedom in the way they think and the way they feel, gives people the autonomy over their own lives, but making sure that you're considering others in everything that you do. What we do have in this country, though, is we do have a government that still has an awful lot of Christianity at its heart. And that's something that polls like this and the census results really should be pushing the government to make changes in terms of things like the 26 bishops who have automatic seats in the House of Lords and therefore get more say over our laws than people of other beliefs. And in terms of things like faith schools and the fact that all state schools, even non-faith schools, have to say Christian prayer every day. They're the sorts of things that we should be looking at and hoping that we could change those things in society to be more representative of the wide range of religions and beliefs that we have.
Graham, we're almost out of time with you, but just wanted to give you an opportunity to come back on those points there, specifically about House of Lords and schools.
Yeah, I will answer that, but quickly too, there's no morality that isn't derived from God. So although morality has always been around, that's because God's always been around. And actually, there's no reason why we ought to love one another unless there's some authority telling us to do that. So I don't accept all the good things that were just said about things we should do, that they're derived from God. In terms of House of Lords, I'm really not that bothered, and I'd rather there was one Christian prayer a week and maybe an atheist sort of presentation a week. If there was a proper Christian assembly in a school a week, that would be a first, actually, because it's not really happening. It's nominally there, but it's not even there in practice. So I'm not too worried about those things either.
OK, Graham, Kathy, got to leave it there. Really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I'd be very sorry to see certain elements go from schools. I think it's good to instil some of these things in children.
Yeah, no, I think it's nice as well, but you will definitely have a view at home, so let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say.
All right, Paul's going to be here with your sport in a couple of minutes.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M6 in Cumbria, the northbound entry slip roads closed at junction 44 north of Carlisle after an accident causing queues. In Lancashire, the A5230 is closed westbound off Lytham Road at Blackpool Airport for an investigation. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there are 2 lanes closed westbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 26 and 25 from Chainbar to Brighouse. There are queues towards there. And also in West Yorkshire, the A638 is blocked westbound by an accident on Dewsbury Road in Wakefield, causing queues. Trains have been stopped between Birmingham International and Coventry because of a shortage of staff. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed each way between the A6 and M1 near Bedford because of flooding. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking around 20 minutes in westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Paul Coyte's here to talk about football.
Yes, that's what I'm here for. Aston Villa won, Bayern Munich 0 is right. 1982 in Rotterdam, when Aston Villa won the European Cup and they beat Bayern Munich 1-0 that night. And now, 42 years on, they're back playing. They're sitting at the top table of Europe, is where they are. And they were terrific yesterday. And it is a fantastic result because Bayern Munich just don't lose European ties. It's a long time since they've lost one in this group stage. But anyway, although it's changed, but a great result for Aston Villa. Unai Emery, it's down to him. He's the manager and he's turned things around at Aston Villa.
Yeah.
He should have the freedom of Birmingham and the Aston Villa area.
Probably has.
You probably will, if the way things are going. And also the other one, John Duran. John Duran's a young player who is like your super sub, and he comes on and makes a difference. He's desperate to start these games, but he's not. He's played 9 games. He's only started 1, scored 6 goals, scored a fantastic goal yesterday, 79th minute, and it was a lot. And it was expected that there was a lot of Bayern Munich. They're going forward, and Aston Villa soaked it up, hit them, and it is, honestly, everybody went crazy, and it was to celebrate also the 82. They had the old team there as well, apart from Gary Shaw, who sadly passed away just a couple of weeks ago, who would have been there. But a great night for Aston Villa, and that's what the Champions League's all about. It's all about the excitement.
Prince William was there.
Prince William was there. He had a lovely time as well, getting very, very excited.
Good on him. Now, tonight, we've got Ghent. I never know what Ghent... So is it...
Ghent is Belgium.
Oh, I was going to say that.
There's but, you know, there's also Genk.
Genk?
There's Genk and there's Ghent. And it's one of my favourite derbies, the Genk-Ghent derby. Spurs are away at Ferencváros.
How are you feeling about that?
Well, once I work out where it is, then I'll tell you.
Where?
Well, it's actually Budapest is where it is.
Oh, is it?
So that's where they're heading. So that's at 5:45. Manchester United heading to Portugal, away in Porto. Rangers are at home to Lyon. Hear about Michael Cheika?
No.
Michael Cheika, very famous Australian rugby coach. He was in charge of the Australian rugby side and also in charge of Argentina. He's now taken over at Leicester Tigers, and he's been banned after 1 game. And this happened last week. And he's been banned. He's been suspended for disrespecting a doctor.
Oh.
Have you
Any old doctor or a matchday doctor?
I think it's a matchday doctor. I think it involved... we don't know exactly what happened. All we know is that he disrespected a doctor. How does one disrespect a doctor?
I don't know.
Is it by calling him by his first name and not calling him doctor first?
But don't forget how much power doctors have. I mean, they can...
What sort of power?
Well, they can, if they're in the military, they can remove command from...
What, a doctor can?
Yeah.
So if you disrespect the doctor could then have you removed?
They have ultimate control, doctors, yeah.
Wow. So even in everyday life, in a rugby doctor?
Maybe that's the same.
So he's disrespected him, but they haven't revealed exactly how he's disrespected him. So... how are you disrespected? Is it because you say, you don't know what you're doing?
Probably something.
Is that disrespectful to a doctor?
Yes. I think it is.
We'll find out more.
As a doctor.
Oh, yes, doctor.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You are Dr. Dixon.
I am Dr. Dixon,
yes.
Yes, I don't forget that.
I'm having a little bit of a problem. I wonder if, Doctor, I could discuss this with you. Nobody's listening, are they?
It's a persistent rash.
It is. Well, it's been there for a little while.
I thought so. So where you're sitting.
Now, sailing. Should we do a little sailing?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, sailing. Now, Great Britain have moved closer to a spot in the America's Cup. Now, we've been covering this for a couple of weeks, haven't we?
And I think 100 odd years.
Which means they would...
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadelman-Koo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We're going through the papers now with the podcaster Lewis Oakley and author and journalist Susan Holder. Very good morning to you both. And Lewis, let's start with you, shall we? And the Tory Party conference and the 4 leadership candidates vying to replace Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, and it's still going on. I kind of thought we were near the end. We're not. It's Saturday.
Another month to go, yeah.
Saturday the 2nd of November, although we've got a knockout next week. James Cleverly now is sort of gaining a bit of momentum. I think everyone kind of thought that he was not going to make the final 2, but maybe he will. I think with a lot of the thing that they've been talking about, though, I think none of them are really realistic about reform. I know that they've all said their bit on reform, but to me, Labour won in part because their vote was split between Tories and reform. So until you can come up with a solution for how you're going to get those votes back, I don't see how you're going to win the next election. It doesn't really matter who your leader is.
No, but if you have a strong party, then reform voters would come back if they think it's their best chance.
I don't know, though, because I think the problem that the Tories have got now is
I can feel you emailing in, by the way. But that's the theory.
I understand the theory, but the problem the Tories have got is that a lot of people don't believe what they say because they had 14 years to do it. So you saying, oh, I'm going to sort out immigration now that we're in opposition, I just think people are too sceptical now.
We are all very sceptical, and I tried to find... Yeah, so there's a piece in the Daily Mail that's got the 4 candidates, Tom Tugendhat, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly, and I've gone through and tried to highlight something that each of them have said that I think, well, that's a good thing for them to have said. So Tom Tugendhat said he wanted to draw a line under years of infighting. That's good. I kind of agree with that. Kemi said that she wants to push women to defend women's rights to safe spaces and campaign to stop children being given puberty blockers, and I'm on board with that kind of and that stance, so I quite like that. James Cleverly said he wants to urge the Conservatives to be more normal. That's good. Don't know what he means, but that's good. But then Robert Jenrick said he wants to reignite the spirit of Margaret Thatcher. People will like that. It's not really appealing to me, but I just think this is where we are kind of now with all these people.
I just don't see them making a big comeback at the next election. I just don't think the numbers are there, and I just don't think anything you just read out is going to really change anyone's mind.
I think they got rid of the best person they had. I think Rishi Sunak was the best person to have. And what I would say about Rishi is, as well, is he's the one person I can think of in recent politics who hasn't run away. He's still there.
Yes, that's true.
He actually has stayed. He could have just hightailed it out of here, and he's not.
Very quiet, though,
well, to be fair.
Well, no, but that's what he has to be now. He can't be anything else, can he? But he's still doing his job.
Theresa May stayed on.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. Let's have a look. Can we have a look at the Metro, Susan?
We can. So there's a letter.
A whole lot of stuff.
There's a letter in the Metro that is picking up on the fact that Philip Schofield's been on TV for the last 3 nights on this Castaway programme, where he was cast away on a desert island on his own and did all his own kind of filming and used drones and handheld cameras and stuff, and had a kind of introspective experience. So Castaway is a programme that other people have done, but he's obviously used it to kind of put now his case to a certain extent. And the letter in the Metro has not taken it well, actually called him despicable, and has picked up on the fact that Philip blamed his brother, so his brother Timothy, when it was all going on with Philip Schofield and what he was being kind of accused of having an inappropriate relationship in his workplace, his brother was found guilty of a crime, of child abuse crime. Yeah. Now, this has got nothing to do with Philip Schofield. And Philip Schofield...
it was a sort of last nail in the coffin, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but Philip Schofield railed against this last night. I did watch some of the programme, and he did rail and said, kind of basically, why am I being... He said he was called in and told, basically, you've got to go. You're not going back to work on Monday. And this was the final nail in your coffin. And he's like, but why? I didn't do anything. He actually shopped his brother to the police. And I do think it's all got... The waters have got very, very muddy.
Well, it's because it wasn't one thing that he was let go of. It was obviously the inappropriate relationship. Yes. It was the fact of what happened with his brother and how much he knew, and also the fact that I think people tune into a show like that to see honesty, and there was that whole kind of 2 weeks where they were...
Yeah, do they?
But there was that 2 weeks where Holly and Phil were on the front pages and they were doing a paper review and just pretending it wasn't there. And it was this is so disingenuous now.
It did make his position untenable. But I would say that he didn't do anything illegal. And I do think I have a certain amount of sympathy for him. I had more sympathy before I watched the programme the last 3 nights, mind you.
What have you made of the programme?
I think it was very self-indulgent, unfortunately. I think what he needs to do is be questioned by somebody objective, not sit there and just tell us what he wants to do on a camera. The problem with Philip Schofield, in my opinion, is, and I'm not that he'll thank me for this, but I have met him a couple of times, I do think he's fallen victim to living all of his life in front of a camera so much. Yes. He thinks it has to be on camera for it to be real. And actually, life is the opposite. What's off camera is real. What's on camera...
We all know a lot of people like that,
We do know a lot of people like that, and I think that's the problem. I think he feels that this is the way to go forward. Make a TV programme about yourself. No, do something worthwhile.
I don't think he can fix it. I was thinking, maybe if the other person in question said something, not that I think that it's their responsibility to do that, but it's almost like you talking is not what people want to hear.
Correct.
But there's a non-disclosure agreement, which is...
He'll be under an NDA.
Well, then that's that. But I think you kind of need the person involved to say something. Yeah. Not that I think that there should be the pressure on them to do it.
I don't know that he's done himself any good over the last three nights, unfortunately.
But it's one of those... I mean, there are certain people we know who aren't happy unless they're on telly or unless they're in the papers.
Yeah.
or both?
We
go and do a podcast.
Well, you can do it.
Oh, yeah, a podcast. Somebody will listen.
Someone will listen.
They will one day, Lewis.
Thank you, too. Thank you. Let's look at the weather now with Aidan.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south-east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. Northeast Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M6 in Cumbria, the northbound entry slip roads closed at junction 44 from the A689 north of Carlisle after an accident causing queues. In Lancashire, Squiresgate Lane is closed westbound by Blackpool Airport for an investigation. There are delays of up to 40 minutes to trains between Birmingham International and Birmingham New Street because of a shortage of staff. In Northamptonshire, Wellingborough Road in Rushden is closed each way between Washbrook Road and Macefield Drive after an accident causing delays. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed each way between the A6 and M1 near Bedford because of flooding. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking around 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. On the M25, it's taking around 20 minutes in clockwise delays towards there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's still plenty.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Are the armed forces up to defending Israel against attacks?
Well, former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace raises concerns about Britain's position on the world stage, blaming a lack of military investment.
Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary John Healey clarifies that British military jets were not involved in shooting down Iranian missiles, but were ready to do so.
Well, this comes as US President Biden confirms the United States will avoid involvement in potential strikes against Iran's nuclear sites as Israel vows to retaliate.
Labour Party donor Lord Ellie is to be investigated by the House of Lords Standards watchdog as the Prime Minister pays back £6,000 in gifts and donations.
The Conservative Party conference comes to a close. War stories, repeated rhetoric and jail jokes. But who came out on top?
Catherine's comeback. The Princess of Wales embraces a teenager with cancer as she returns to royal duties.
A historic night in the Champions League for Aston Villa in front of a very happy Prince of Wales as they beat Bayern Munich. Liverpool beat Bologna 2-0 at Anfield, and in sailing, Britain are very much ship-shape and Bristol fashion. I can't apologise enough as they close in on the Italians in a place in the America's Cup.
Make the most of today's widely fine weather. After all the wet recent conditions that central and southern parts have experienced, it's a welcome respite from the rain. I'll have the full forecast coming up very shortly.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Charles has been in touch, says, hi, Stephen and Ellie. Can you tell Paul that he can splice the main brace once the sun is over the yardarm?
Yes, it's funny you should say that because I was going to do that.
All these phrases, I think it's quite interesting.
Hoist the mainsail.
Yeah, but you don't use that in every day.
I do.
Do you?
Yes. Well, when I see you every morning, what do I say? Ahoy there.
You do. That's true.
You do that, to be fair.
It is true. But it's all these little phrases. I mean, it's a bit like...
there is. There's loads.
Close but no cigar.
Yeah.
Which
that's not sailing, though, is it?
No, it's not sailing. No, but that was from Fairgrounds. When you would win, the prize would be a cigar. So when you try and knock the coconut
Is that
off
right?
the cigar. Yeah,
I had no idea.
You were close but no cigar.
I had no idea.
So there's loads of stuff like that.
But it's when it's those phrases like you go, well, you know, I'm going to show you the ropes. Nobody would even question it for a second, and you go, show the ropes? What is that? But of course, it's an old sailing. There's probably more sailing terms that we use than anything else.
Yeah, and I said fathom, to fathom something.
Yeah, to fathom something. It's because of the depth, fathoms. Yeah.
Americans use that a lot, don't they? They say, I can't fathom.
Hey, I just can't fathom.
And they all say, whatnot.
Oh, do they?
And whatnot.
And whatnot?
Yeah.
Yeah. What, is that a knot as in K-N-O-T? Is it a sailing knot?
No idea. You'd have to ask an American.
OK, fine. OK.
Yeah.
We've got more of that to come in the sport later.
Well, there's something to look forward to, eh?
Yeah. I like all of that, though. I just think it's quite interesting where we get our language
Yeah, no,
from.
I like all that stuff as well. Very good.
There's lots. There's a lot.
Now, the Labour peer at the centre of the donation scandal is now under investigation by the House of Lords Standards watchdog.
Yes, Lord Wahid Ali is set to face a probe over what is being called alleged non-registration of interests.
This comes as Downing Street said Sir Keir Starmer had now paid back more than £6,000 that he received since the election.
Well, a Labour spokesperson told GB News that Lord Ali will cooperate fully with the Lords Commissioner, and he is confident that all interests have been registered. We cannot comment further while this is ongoing.
Let's head to South London, should we? We can talk to Chief Political Correspondent at The Times, Aubrey Allegretti. Good to see you this morning, Aubrey.
Good morning.
I mean, this, to be perfectly honest, this seems like a bit of a murky scandal that just whatever they try to do isn't going anywhere at the moment.
No, because it's one of those issues that has sort of always existed in Westminster, but has only become noticed and, I suppose, taken on a new prominence in recent months. And that's partly because of the backdrop to this, which is Rachel Reeves sort of bracing the country for £22 billion worth of tax rises, spending cuts and a squeeze to the welfare bill. But the reason this has gained so much prominence is, I suppose, people looking at this and saying, is it a great look for politicians to be taking so many freebies at a time when people are being told we're going to have to sort of tighten our collective belts? Lord Ellie is obviously the sort of flypaper, I suppose, for a lot of the criticism that's been levied at politicians. But his donations and his support for Labour politicians goes back quite a long way.
What do you make of Sir Keir Starmer giving back £6,000 to cover some of these freebies that he's received, including Taylor Swift tickets and hired designer clothes for his wife? Do you think that's enough to kind of clear the water in what is a very murky scandal?
Well, this was a really sort of surprising statement from Downing Street because it came almost out of the blue. It's rejuvenated a lot of the speculation and the criticism that's been levied at Number 10 for their handling of this whole saga. And they say that basically they had to make this statement because a new register of interests was going to be published in which this was going to be made clear. But obviously it completely overshadowed Sir Keir Starmer's press conference in Brussels yesterday when he went to go and visit Ursula von der Leyen. It also obviously leaves open the question of whether or not there are going to be further repayments. There are still, I think, £40,000 of freebies and hospitality that the Labour leader and now Prime Minister has accepted. So the question is, why is he paying back the money for some and not others? That hasn't yet been fully explained. And then there's, of course, the question of what precedent this sets for other Labour politicians who've received this. So we've heard from Sarah Jones, the minister today, who says that she's received 3 tickets during her time as an MP to stuff, including one for BBC Proms, and she's looking at being able to pay that back if she can. But this is now a sort of slippery slope, if you like. How many other politicians are going to be asked to pay back this money because of Keir Starmer's decision?
Very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's talk to Sarah Jones, Minister of State for Business, Energy and Net Zero. Good to see you this morning. I mean, as Aubrey mentioned there, you're looking to pay back some of the freebies you've got. I mean, it raises questions as to whether everyone in the shadow cabinet who's received something, certainly since the election, should actually be putting their hands in their pockets now.
Well, look, I think the first thing to say, which is really important, is that no rules have been broken here. Nobody is suggesting they have. The issue in the previous government was lack of transparency, people not declaring things, and then nobody quite knowing where money was coming from and what it was for, and the huge scandals that we saw with Owen Paterson and others. That is not in question here. There is no kind of rules that have been broken. But what the Prime Minister has said is we need to think about these things in a number of ways. One is there's a difference between being in opposition and being in government. In government, you have the levers of power, and it's a different situation. And so we are 12 weeks into our new government going to look at those principles and rules around hospitality. And in advance of that, he's made some payments back. I have, in the 7 years I've been an MP, registered three events, one of which was a proms in recent weeks. And I'm looking at that. It may not be possible to pay it back because it's a kind of gift in kind. It wasn't an actual ticket. It was I was a guest of the BBC. But of those 3 things, we're looking at the principles. There's a difference between opposition and government. No rules have been broken here, but 12 weeks in, we're saying, OK, let's look at these rules around hospitality and gifts and what are the principles around it. So many politicians, many journalists, many business people are invited to events. Most politicians will turn most things down most of the time, but they go to build relationships, to talk to business, and it's perfectly reasonable for them to do so. So this principle, look at our ministerial code. We'll just have a look at those things and see what needs to be changed.
It's interesting you talk about no rules being broken, which is fair enough. Except, I mean, that's it. When you look at the expenses scandal from back in the day, I mean, when David Cameron was Prime Minister, no rule, well, apart from 1 or 2 very specific cases, the vast majority of MPs there hadn't broken any rules. It was just the fact that, as David Cameron said as Prime Minister, you know, it doesn't smell right. This doesn't, morally it isn't right, even if the rules haven't been broken.
Well, I don't think. I mean, there were rules broken then, and people who ended up going to prison, if you remember. So there were rules broken. I think in subsequent years, the issue has always been transparency and making sure things are declared in an open way so that the public can see. That's why we're having these conversations, because the public can see what those issues are. And I think that there is nothing comparable in this to the huge scandals we saw over money and taking money to try and influence ministers and Owen Paterson and all of those scandals we saw over recent times. But look, there is an issue here that the Prime Minister is responding to. He wants to build trust in politics. He wants us to be a force for good. He wants us to grow the economy and do all the things that will get people good jobs and more money in their pockets. We want to make sure we're getting it right on hospitality, and that's why he's looking at the principles, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Can I ask you about Lord Waheed Ali, who is now under investigation by the House of Lords over non-registration of interest? It is all about thousands of pounds in gifts to not only the Prime Minister, but to many MPs in the Cabinet as well. What do you make of that investigation, and what do you think will be found?
Well, I mean, he will completely cooperate with the investigation, of course, and he's confident he's registered everything in the way that he should have done. And that's that, really. We need to let that investigation run its course.
Questions answered about Lord Waheed Ali by the Labour government, namely why he got that Downing Street pass. Why did he have access to number 10?
Well, you know, he's been a Lord for decades, and he's been very involved in trying to deliver a Labour government for a very long time. That's why he made the donations he did, because he wanted to deliver a Labour government. He was helping us do that. He had a pass for a very short period of time, and he doesn't have one anymore.
He handed it back, though, which would suggest that he knew that that was wrong. No donor should be allowed access to Downing Street. They certainly shouldn't be allowed a parliamentary pass. That is for people who are working inside number 10, and there still has never been an answer as to why Lord Waheed Ali was given that pass. And then you hear about him being under investigation by the House of Lords about the non-registration of interest, and there are questions about what power he wielded over the Labour government.
I don't think there's any question that he was trying to influence anything other than to deliver a Labour government. He had a pass for a very short period of time. It was a temporary pass. He doesn't have it now. And that, I think, is the end of that. He has been involved in the Labour Party for decades. I can remember in 1997, he was, involved in getting a Labour government back then when he was much younger. He has made significant donations to the Labour Party, which we're very grateful for, to help us get a Labour government. But that is the end of it. He is not influencing any policy at all.
Here's one for you from one of our viewers who styles herself Lady Westminster. And it's just an interesting take, and I wonder if it's something you'll perhaps take away with you after this interview. She says it's a memo to Sarah Jones and any other Labour person coming out to defend the indefensible. Stop digging a bigger hole than the one you're in. Stop telling us no rules were broken. We, the people, know rules weren't broken, but everyone's calling out the hypocrisy and greed. And that, I mean, whether you agree with that or not, it's an interesting viewpoint, isn't it? Because people are seeing, members of the government, people with lots of money, getting lots of freebies, fancy clothes and all the rest of it, and it just doesn't look right.
Look, and I will always listen to people, and I completely understand where they're coming from. I wouldn't say otherwise. I believe genuinely that the Prime Minister is right to look at these principles around hospitality. Of course, as your caller says, no rules were broken. We all know that, but we are looking at those principles. What are the principles in terms of the events you might go to in your constituency, the events that might help you to build relationships with business, the events that might help you do your job? And we will look at those. I don't know what that will conclude, but it will conclude shortly, and that will be something that the public can look at and respond to.
Can we just ask you, I know you're running out of time, but the situation with Israel, John Healey sort of implying we had planes involved in action that then weren't. I mean, he's clarified that situation. However, former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace now saying we just haven't got the capability at the moment to deal with things like the Israel situation. What is the government going to do? It's about more investment. Now, that's a Conservative problem. but you've got the reins now, you've got the purse strings. What are we going to do to make sure we can still be a player on the international stage?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of things. Firstly, the Strategic Defence Review, which is underway now, which will set out what we need to do in this space and how we get to that 2.5% of GDP spending on defence, which is really important. Second is we need to renew our voice internationally. I think everybody would say that over the last few years, we've diminished that voice on the world stage, and we have a part to play. And that's why the Prime Minister has been so vocal and so involved in conversations with Israel, with Lebanon and Gaza, with all of the Gulf states. Why the Foreign Secretary has been talking to all of these as well and using all our diplomatic power to try and de-escalate the situation, because that is the answer. We want a ceasefire in Lebanon, we want a ceasefire in Gaza. We absolutely condemn what Iran has done, and we want to see de-escalation, and that is what we need to use our soft power, if you call it, for, by having a greater voice on the world stage and working with our allies. But of course, you're right, we need to make sure we've got the defence capability here. This is a difficult world we find ourselves in. We come into government 12 weeks in, and our geopolitics is very challenging, and we will respond to that.
Okay. Minister, good to see you. Sorry we didn't have long. I could have talked to you about loads of stuff today, but thank you very much indeed. We appreciate it. I mean, and to be fair, to give her due, the Minister actually wanted to talk about infrastructure and energy infrastructure within her own brief, which we didn't have time to actually get to. The question about that I would have put to her, maybe we'll cover it later on in the day here on GB News. They would say they're going to unlock all this infrastructure investment, but that isn't including anything nuclear. And in terms of net zero, that should be a priority, shouldn't it? I would have thought. It's all this talk from 10 years ago when David Cameron was in government with the Lib Dems, and really they were saying, well, if we do any more nuclear build here, it's going to be 10 years before we see it. Well, we'd be seeing it now, and we would have been in a better position with all the fuel crisis.
Yeah, and energy security is now more important than ever, isn't it? Especially with the state of the world as it is. But let us know what you think on anything that we discussed there with Sarah Jones, gbnews.com/you'll say. Let's have a look at the weather now, shall we, with Aidan?
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south-east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. Northeast Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, some good news this morning. You've still got plenty of time to grab an autumn cash boost of an incredible £36,000. It's actually the biggest cash prize of the year so far. Here are all the details that you need.
On demand. Good luck.
Best of luck to you. Now, former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace has said UK armed forces are not up to defending Israel from missile attacks.
Well, it comes as questions were raised yesterday over the UK's involvement in trying to prevent Iran's 180 missile attack on Israel.
The Defence Secretary, John Healey, initially said UK forces played their part to prevent further escalation.
But on a visit to Cyprus yesterday, he said that troops didn't engage and instead acted as a wider deterrence.
This is the scene now in Beirut. We can see there's been another explosion. You can see the aftermath of that there on your screen. I mean, it's an ongoing situation, isn't it? And these attacks are going to continue. Let's head to Bournemouth and former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Elwood. Good to see you this morning. I'm a bit torn on what Ben Wallace has had to say, in that it's all well and good saying we need to be a bigger player on the international stage with all of this, and yet with the numbers as they are and an investment down during a Tory regime in Parliament, he hasn't got a great amount of room to be critical, has he?
Well, good morning. I'm actually in Warsaw, in Poland,
I beg your pardon.
not in jolly Bournemouth, at a security conference here where we're supposed to be discussing Ukraine. But of course, all eyes are on the Middle East after that huge development that's taken place with the salvo of missiles that came from Iran, fired across a number of countries heading towards Israel. Ben Wallace is correct in saying that we need to look at our situation. The reason is because the last 3 decades have been relatively peaceful, but we've entered a new era of insecurity. I think I've stressed this on your program many times, and that penny really hasn't dropped, because there is a link between what's going on in Eastern Europe, where I am today, and indeed in the Middle East as well. We're entering a world of conflict, and our globally exposed economy is going to be affected if things ratchet out of control here, in the Middle East, and Iran chooses to close the Straits of Hormuz and the Houthis close down the Red Sea because they're not protected by international shipping such as our own, then there'll be knock-on consequences to inflation in the UK. It's all interlinked. And there's an axis developing between countries choosing another interpretation of our rules-based order. And that is the new world that we've entered. That's the world that Ben Wallace, that I would agree with, is saying, look, we need to prepare for, and that's why we need to invest further in our defence posture.
On that note, Sir Ben has also been talking about investing in our own infrastructure and upgrade of our missile systems in light of what we're seeing in the Middle East. I wanted to ask your thoughts on Bob Seeley. He's written a piece in the Daily Mail today saying that Britain needs to build its own Iron Dome. I mean, he talks about the rise of AI, he talks about the use of drones, and he says in 5 to 10 years' time, we will need our own Iron Dome system to keep out enemy drones and enemy missiles.
Yes, that is where the conduct of war is going. That non-state actors and state actors are choosing now to go to conflict in this way. I would say, to reassure people across Britain, that we are very well protected. We have urgent operational capabilities of launching typhoons to be able to take out these drones and missiles in the very same way that they did in April and could have done so in the last few days. The Type 45 as well, one of the best air defense capabilities in the world. But Bob Seeley is correct. Should we then now invest in an Iron Dome for the future? That is the way that we do need to go. But there isn't the pressure at the moment. There isn't the shouts by the British people, if you like, to the politicians to say we need to invest in our defense. It hardly came up, if you recall, at the last general election. The one idea, which was about all of nation preparedness, if you like, about the national service, which is actually my idea, after taking the Defence Select Committee to Finland, was dismissed. Nobody was really interested in talking about it. It was very much focused on domestic issues. So I hope even our conversation today will illuminate the wider threats that we're now going to face. We're entering a very bumpy decade Indeed.
It's part of the problem we're facing, and you can sort of say this. I guess you can be a bit clearer now that you're sort of out of the frontline politics of it all. Is that this involves long-term investment, and that's what governments never want to do, do they? They always want to do something in which there can be a result seen within their parliamentary term.
Yes, I think that's very, very fair. I would say that I think I spoke my mind when I was in Parliament as well as much as I could. But you're absolutely right. And the message here in Poland is for Ukraine begging for more weapons and systems and so forth. Remove those caveats, those long-range missiles. They want to be able to fire at range. Very grateful to Britain, I should say, that's empty its stockpiles of munitions. But now we need to replenish that. And we haven't got the capability to not only keep supporting Ukraine, so making sure that we're protected ourselves. We do, therefore, need to invest in our industrial capacity to get ourselves back up. Readiness, preparedness, the mobility capability, all this is seen by our adversaries and taken advantage of. And I should say that it's also in the grey zone. That's where this war will go. We're already being attacked every day by Russia from cyber attacks and so forth. 95% of our data comes by sea. Protecting those undersea cables requires military capability, and we need to get better at it.
Tobias Elwood, good to see you this morning. Thank you for your thoughts on that.
Thank you.
And to be fair, he was always straightforward.
He was, yeah.
A lot of politicians obviously have a lot more to say once they're out of Parliament. Tobias has always been pretty straightforward on that. It's refreshing, actually. But it's this long-term... It's the same with the nuclear issue we were just talking about.
Isn't it?
Long-term
investment.
They don't want to do it. And you can politically and understand why, but it's the only way we're going to improve as a country is to start, forking out for projects which we're not going to see the results from for another 10 years or more.
Yeah, but it leaves us exposed, doesn't it, if we don't make those investments now?
It's got to be done. Right, still to come, we're going to talk about Catherine. I was going to say Kate then, which I don't like. Catherine's comeback. The Princess of Wales has really a lovely meeting with a teen cancer victim as she returns to royal duties. We'll tell you more in a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You've come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice, foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in steel vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Now, some very happy news. The Princess of Wales has returned to royal duties as she's seen hugging a teenage girl who's battling cancer.
Yeah, the Waleses met the aspiring photographer who has an aggressive form of the disease during a ceremony for sporting heroes.
Well, we're delighted to be joined now by the former royal correspondent for The Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles, and so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that, touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in, a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy. Now, this young lady, this Liz Hatton, who shares Catherine's passion for photography, has a rare form of cancer. And so it was fantastic for them to meet. And this is the sort of thing that Catherine will be doing a lot more of in the future.
It's the interesting thing, and it reminds me actually a little bit of what Charles was doing not so long ago, which is actually the focus is not on them. It's on other people who are actually in a much more serious position.
You're absolutely right, Stephen. And it helps highlight these diseases and illnesses to the public, and in the hope that the public will be able to help in some way financially to the charities involved in trying to battle cancer. And that's the purpose of members of the royal family who support these various charities.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers?
Yeah, yes, they have. They've gone out of their way. I mean, there was a time where you couldn't find out anything about the royal family, and you had to do all sorts of things just to get minute details. But here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling, or are still battling, cancer, just like everyone else. It doesn't matter whether you're blue-blooded, red-blooded, or whatever blooded. You are susceptible to catching these sort of diseases.
Let's look at the pictures. I mean, beautiful picture on the front of the Telegraph today of the hog. I just wonder, Charles, as you know these people better than the rest of us plebs out here, and certainly us two plebs in the studio. How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. And I think she wanted to particularly take a picture of the former footballer, Ali McCoy, receiving his OBE. So they invited her to come along to the investiture to take these pictures. And then, of course, she had her family, well, the family were invited as well, and they had a private meeting with Catherine from which these pictures, we see. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, has said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
Oh.
I bet it was.
Yeah, and she's got this bucket list. It's just so lovely, isn't it, that she was able to do that.
Good on her. Right, we're going to go through the sport with Paul in a couple of minutes.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A19 is partly blocked southbound by an accident between Castle Eden and Sheraton, causing delays in both directions. In Lancashire, Squiresgate Lane is closed each way by Blackpool Airport for an investigation. There are delays of up to 40 minutes to trains between Birmingham International and Birmingham New Street because of a shortage of staff. There are a couple of problems in Northamptonshire. Wellingborough Road in Rushden is closed eastbound after an accident. And on the A43, there's a lane closed southbound towards the M40, where someone's broken down just after Tusmore with queues from the Barleymow roundabout at Juniper Hill. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed each way between the A6 and M1 near Bedford because of flooding. And in Surrey, the A245 Portsmouth Road is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between Seven Hills Road and the A3 at Paynes Hill Cobham, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30am, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Paul Coit is here to go through all of the sports. Should we start with football?
Shall we? We better mention Aston Villa again. Aston Villa did very well yesterday in the Champions League. Beat Bayern Munich. Everybody thought Bayern Munich were going to win. It's the first game at Villa Park in the Champions League ever, although European Cup, they won it back in 1982. They brought the old players out who beat, ironically, Bayern Munich back in 1982 in Rotterdam. So they brought the players out beforehand. The fans were up for it. Everybody was up for it. And Aston Villa won 1-0. And Unai Emery was extremely happy. Shall we hear from him?
When John Duran received the ball, he was scoring quick because in the analysis we did of them, we were speaking a lot about how is usually the position of Neuer, always high. And really, I just spoke with my coach assist about how he should, because he had in his mind this possibility with Neuer. Yes.
Now, to be fair to him,
Yes.
I couldn't do a press conference in Spanish.
Yes.
It wouldn't sound too good.
Yes, it's a bit tricky. But you know what he does? He speaks the language of football quite beautifully.
Well, clearly,
that's what he does. It is all that matters.
Yes.
John Duran, he mentioned there, who scored the goal. He's their super sub. Came off the bench, 79th minute, scored just the most amazing goal over the top of Manuel Neuer's head in the Bayern Munich goal. So it's a great result for them and unbeaten in the Champions League so far, because there is actually now a league with all these 36 teams. And anyway, so good result for them. A couple of other results. Liverpool beat Bologna 2-0.
Yes.
Lille beat Real Madrid. Good old Lille. And it's the first time Real Madrid have lost a game in 37. So that was a turn up for the books. And in the Europa League, Spurs are away against...
Spurs? You mean Tottenham?
Tottenham Hotspur against Ferencváros.
Oh.
And that's in Budapest.
Budapest. Are we Pest or Pest?
Pest.
I think we'd say Pest. But
Budapest.
Pest.
5:45, that kick-off.
Then isn't there Olympique Lyon?
Yes, Olympique Lyonnais.
Or Lyonnais.
Yeah. Lyon. They're playing in Glasgow. They're playing Rangers tonight. Manchester United away to Porto, and that's in the Europa League. And Chelsea are also playing Genk, not Ghent, and that's in the Conference League tonight.
I thought they were playing Ghent and not Genk.
Oh, is it? Is it Genk or Ghent?
I think it is Ghent.
I thought it was Genk.
No, it's Ghent.
Never... See, a little tip for everybody. Never mix up your Genk and your Ghent.
There you go.
Shall we talk about the sailing?
Yes, please.
Play that game.
Well, look, we've got GB are looking very good in the to get to the America's Cup to beat the Italians. They need to win one more race. But more importantly than that, we are looking at sailing terms, aren't we? So I've got a few more for you.
That have entered our normal lexicon.
Absolutely. If you're dead in the water, there's one.
Yeah.
Obviously. How about your left high and dry?
Oh.
Left high and dry. How about dead reckoning?
Oh,
dead reckoning.
I never even thought of that.
Is a navigation term.
Yeah.
Have you've had that situation where you've just been taken aback?
Is that one? What's taken aback?
Taken aback is when a ship is pushed in a backwards direction when violent winds or a careless helmsman, which I've been accused of being many times in the past, cause the sails to blow rearward against the mast, which would this sudden predicament could then snap a mast or severely damage rigging.
Oh.
Taken aback. Give a wide berth.
Yeah, that's good.
On an even keel. You're on board with that? You're on board?
Oh, yes.
You know what?
There's so many.
I'm in the doldrums. In the doldrums.
Yeah.
That's when...
What doldrums?
Doldrums is when there's no wind. So you're at sea, you've got the sails up, there's no wind, you're not going anywhere. That's the doldrums. And how about if we just want to change tack?
Oh,
there's another one.
very good.
There
very
are
good.
hundreds. In fact,
Every
we've
day's a
realised
school day with
everything
you,
that we possibly say comes from sailing.
John Britton has literally just messaged saying Coit should walk the plank.
You know what?
Ain't that the truth?
Ain't that the truth? Ahoy there. Thank you very much.
Very good. Very
Thank
interesting.
you. That was fun.
We're a seafaring nation.
Clearly.
There we are.
If
In our everyday
countdown,
language.
need a new someone in dictionary corner.
Oh, yeah. How about that? Yeah.
You're their man.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
I've got a 4-letter word.
Yeah, bet you have. Right. We've got the papers heading away in just a moment, so don't go anywhere.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Please tell me that we're British. In our darkest hour, we can work around this. The beer will still be flowing at Christmas. Tell me, please.
Martin, without using bad language, there's no words to describe that this is another major blow to the hospitality sector. I wake up every day with anxiety thinking, what's going to happen to us now? Oh my God, now the weather's against us. Not only are the government absolutely battering us, then the weather's now hitting us as well.
Kate Stewart, this can only mean one thing. Prices, once again, going through the roof.
And there's nothing we can do. We have on costs. We have to buy from the brewery. We have the VAT. We have then the VAT, what we take. It is an absolute nightmare. To be in the pub game now, Martin, is very, very difficult. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just keeps hammering us from every different direction. And obviously, we have to pass that on to the customers, then price increases. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to sell beer at an inflated price. We want it as cheap as possible to get people through them doors. But we have no option. They're going to go up again in the new budget. You know, there's no help for us. What are we supposed to do, Martin, except the only option is to close the doors and say, enough is enough, we can't do this anymore. I absolutely cry my eyes out having to put the prices up, because you think, oh my God, people are just going to turn away and walk. But we can't swallow the costs all the time, Martin. It's impossible for us to do, because we will go bankrupt. There has to be, there's inflation getting hammered on us yet again, and we have to pass it on. I feel it when I take my children out for something to eat. You're like, wow, that has just cost a fortune. But what is the answer? The answer is the government needs to look at saving the hospitality sector and stop being so greedy in everything that they take away from us, or there won't be pubs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, let's go through the papers with podcaster Lewis Oakley and the author and journalist extraordinaire, Susan Holder. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You've picked the Standard online, Evening Standard.
Yes.
What's this?
So what this is about the county councils not having any money, which we know, but the detail is quite shocking. So it's a budget and spending review which shows that 37 county councils have a funding gap of 20.3 billion, and what they're saying is the shortfall has been identified as being due to spending on adult social care, children's services and home-to-school transport for children with special education needs and disabilities, that those are the things that have cost so much money. There's been such an increase in those things that it's 83%. And the worry with this is, how are they going to make the shortfall? Like, what are they going to do?
Well, these are things we can't cut back on.
We can't cut back, but what they're going to cut back on are the other key services, which are libraries, buses, road maintenance, children's centres. Pick one. Which one would you axe? You wouldn't axe any of them. What are we going to do?
You can't cut back any more on these services.
Well, we're broke, so they're going to have to put our taxes up.
It's a pity there aren't more Lord Alleys around that could put their hand in the pocket for things like this. This is where we need the money to go, isn't
point.
it? But yeah, council tax could go up, I suppose. Parking charges are coming in everywhere. That's one way of making up the kind of shortfall. I just would like to know, though, when they do that to people, when they tax you, is this where the money goes? It just doesn't seem... The mismanagement of funds in these places is colossal.
The problem is we need to grow the economy.
We do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, higher taxes, higher charges, higher everything creates solves an immediate shortfall, but stifles long-term growth.
But there is money. It's where you put money. I mean, I hate to bring it up. It's nothing to do with this story. But it's just me. But HS2, all the money that went into that.
Yeah.
This is what we need to be spending money on. Why can't we put money into something like that?
Well, good point, Lewis.
Yeah, there's not enough thinking on where the money is going, I think, is the big thing. And I think there's so many things all of us could go and take a big red pen to and just cut off the spending books and put it into things like this, like making sure that kids with special education needs actually get to school, where they're going and looking after the elderly. And I guess this is the thing with the demographic change, though. People are getting older, living longer, so they need more care, and that's just something that we have to fess up to.
Lewis, let's take a look at the Times, shall we? And this is a doctor charged in connection with Matthew Perry's death has pleaded guilty.
Yeah, I mean, there's two doctors now that have pleaded guilty over this, and obviously we were all really shocked of Matthew Perry's death, but I think that this raises a point. I know it's in America, but it's about the trust in doctors, and they found some of the text between these doctors saying, and I quote here, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." And it's preying on people's vulnerabilities and people with addiction, and these doctors thinking about how much money they could potentially make from someone rather than thinking about their care. I know it's in America, so it's slightly different, but it's definitely, people love friends, so this case, there's a lot of eyes on it.
Now, you can look back over history and actually think about famous people who have had... You get to a point of fame and you get to a point, if you're a kind of person who's got some kind of difficulties, which obviously Matthew Perry famously did with his alcoholism and addiction to drugs and things, but you get a certain amount of money that there will be people who prey on you. It happened to Elvis Presley, it happened to Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
There will be people in the medical profession who will kind of see that kind of situation and exploit it.
But it's partly their own fault.
Of course it is.
In the sense that people say, well, I've got this much money, you give me what I want, otherwise I'll get someone else who will.
Well, that's true, but you do have to make an example of the people who exploit them as well. I think you have to go after them and you have to make them pay for what they've done, because people, you know, those people in those situations need help. They don't need people around them who are going to facilitate what they're trying to do to themselves.
I'm shocked, Susan, by Stella McCartney.
Are you?
In the Daily Telegraph.
Are you actually shocked?
You're very good friends with her father.
I'm not very good friends.
Come on, what did he say to the last time you saw him?
He said, "Hey, baby."
Hey, baby. I mean,
which I think probably means he doesn't know my name, but I'll take that from Paul McCartney. That's kind of fine.
Stella's been using bad language.
Yeah, so Stella McCartney has got a publicity campaign, which is obviously working very well because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's for her fashion design company, and she's put posters all around London with "It's about effing time." Now, you see what I did there?
Yes.
But you knew what I meant, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Well, so that's my point, really. So she's actually spelt the word out on all these posters, and people have gone a bit mad and said, well, children can see this and you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
And I think, in a way, much as I love Stella McCartney, it's kind of the fact that they've reported on this in the Telegraph without using certain letters, and we all know what it means, kind of means, well, maybe she could have done something different. It is a callback, though. Do you remember she wore a T-shirt with the very same slogan on it?
Did she?
Famously, in 1999, when Paul McCartney got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she turned up and stood next to him with "It's about effing time" on next to her T-shirt.
Definitely one of those parents that would kick off at this.
Would you be scribbling it out? Because people have been doing so.
Yeah, I would happily scribble it out. I'm hard enough to sort my own language in front of the children. Luckily, I do things like this, so I'm used to coming up with different words. But the swearing around the kids, I really don't like it. Because once they learn the word, that's it. And then they know it's a naughty word.
And they want to use it all the time.
Yeah.
I have to say, someone where I live used that word in some graffiti. And I complained to the council.
Oh, really?
And they went and painted over it.
Yes.
So the idea that it's
being used as a publicity campaign. I think, you know, and I think it's quite a kind of funny reference because I get the reference and everything else, but I kind of see that actually she doesn't need to. She didn't need to spell it out.
Doesn't make me want to buy it.
No.
Can we talk about this parenting row, please?
Yes. So Gemma, oh gosh, what is her name? Atkinson. I was going to say Artisan, but she's another actress, isn't she?
I don't know who she is.
She used to be in Hollyoaks, and she's married to Gorka from Strictly Come Dancing, and she has two children with Gorka. And she has done. She's told people on Instagram that she nipped her little boy who was 1. She gave him a little pinch, and the reason she did that was he'd pinched their other daughter, who's 5, and she wanted to show him what it meant. So when she said, "No, don't do that, it hurts," she nipped it, and people have gone mad and said it's bad parenting. All I will say is it is quite hard to actually tell children what, you know, get them to be empathetic and get them to understand. I remember when I was little, my mum saying to me, "Don't touch that, it's hot," and she actually went and put my hand on the oven door that was closed just so I understood what hot meant. So that, because otherwise
I'm not a fan.
And I know, but I can understand what she's not pinching him for no reason. She's pinching him to make a point.
But I've got 2 kids that are very young and they fight. I don't slap one of them so they know how it feels. I, first of all, have a tone where they know when I say stop, it means stop now. And if they don't, they're going to the naughty step, and that works. And then they have to apologise. So I feel like pinching is like, that's just an easy
have they had the
way.
biting phase?
Yeah, they had a biting phase. And when they had the biting phase, you know, there were people telling me, you need to bite them so that they know what it's like.
No.
And I was like,
Yeah,
I'm not biting my kids. I can discipline this through tone and through actions and consequences.
And that's working for you?
Yeah, it's worked fine.
Yeah. I just sort of think, with things like this, people are going to do things differently. There isn't a one-size-fits-all.
I don't think a little kind of "don't do that, it hurts" to a little bit. I really don't think Gemma is doing anything wrong in that.
As a rule, I don't like judging other people's parenting, but I do like to put the other side of the argument where I don't think we need to resort to that.
Do you think we've become too soft as parents? Got about 10 seconds.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah, I think there's a lot more, too much wheedling with children, too much negotiating instead of no means no.
Yes. And look how your boy turned out.
He's a marvel.
We see, there you go. There you go.
GBnews.com/you'll say.
All right, thank you both. Been good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
Should we get a check on the weather?
Let's, with Aidan.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. North East Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham on the A19, there's a lane closed southbound after an accident between Castle Eden and Sheraton with delays in both directions. In Lancashire, Squires Gate Lane is closed by Blackpool Airport for an investigation. The M65 in Lancashire is partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 6 and 5 near Blackburn. On the M6 in Staffordshire, there's a lane closed southbound between junctions 10A and 10 from the M54 towards the Walsall-Wolverhampton turn, causing queues. There are delays of up to 40 minutes to trains between Birmingham International and Birmingham New Street because of a shortage of staff. In Leicestershire, the A563 is partly blocked by an accident on Glen Hills Way in Leicester, causing queues. In Northamptonshire, Wellingborough Road in Rushden is closed eastbound after an accident. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed between the A6 and M1 because of flooding. And the M2 in Kent's partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 5 and 4 from Sittingbourne to Gillingham, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We love.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning. Are the armed forces up to defending Israel against attacks?
Well, the former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace raises questions over Britain's position on the world stage, blaming a lack of military investment.
Meanwhile, Defence Secretary John Healey clarifies that British military jets weren't involved in shooting down Iranian missiles, but they were ready to do so.
Well, this comes as President Biden confirms the US will avoid involvement in potential strikes against Iran's nuclear sites as Israel vows to retaliate.
The Prime Minister pays back £6,000 in gifts and donations as Labour Party donor Lord Ellie is investigated by the House of Lords Standards Watchdog. Earlier, we spoke to the Minister for Business and Trade, Sarah Jones.
Been a Lord for decades, and he's been very involved in trying to deliver a Labour government for a very long time. That's why he made the donations he did.
Conservative Party conference comes to a close. War stories, repeated rhetoric and jail jokes. But who came out on top?
Catherine's comeback. The Princess of Wales embraces a teenager with cancer as she returns to royal duties.
Make the most of today's widely fine weather. After all the wet recent conditions that central and southern parts have experienced, it's a welcome respite from the rain. I'll have the full forecast coming up very shortly.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Oh, have you got something?
Yeah, lots of
Go
you
on.
getting in touch on religion. We had a debate earlier about is religion being phased out in society, more atheists now in the UK than ever before. Eileen says religion is supposed to be about love and peace, but too many people have used it as an excuse to promote hatred and violence. As a devout atheist, I think that our lives are way better off without religion.
Well, I would disagree with you on that aspect of it, Eileen, but you're quite right that too many people do use it to be aggressive, partisan, very difficult, which is a problem. I don't know how you get around that, really. There will always be people who have these differing views that make it problematic. I'm a bit torn on this from Hells, who said, my CV church went political. I don't want to hear my vicar going on about how evil the Tories are and about white slavery. And I agree. I don't like it when the vicar gets political.
Yeah.
However, Jesus got political at times.
That's true.
And so you can't sort of say they absolutely shouldn't be doing it. But you've got to do it in a way that doesn't alienate half of your congregation.
That is a very good point.
That's the way to do it.
Tom says a very similar thing, saying one reason for the decline of the Catholic Church, the Church of England, is because the leadership is spending time criticising the government. I don't think they'll be criticising this Labour government instead of doing what they should be and working to get Christians back into the pews.
Well...
Are they too political? Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Dear me, I'm in trouble. By someone messaging in whose name I can't pronounce, I don't know, Sarsi. What are the doldrums, which is what I asked Paul Coy. The level of general knowledge is abysmal. Well, I'm not a sailor. We sort of go about calm, about a calm and a dead calm and all that sort of thing. I know what doldrums are, is how we refer to them in everyday life, but I didn't realise it meant a dead calm, basically. But maybe you're a sailor, Sarsi.
Maybe.
And know these things.
Anyway, do keep reviews coming in. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Now, former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace has said the UK Armed Forces are not up to defending Israel from missile attacks.
Well, it comes as questions were raised yesterday over the UK's involvement in trying to prevent Tehran's 180 missile attack on Israel.
The Defence Secretary, John Healey, initially said UK forces played their part to prevent further escalation.
But on a visit to Cyprus yesterday, he said that troops didn't engage and instead acted as a wider deterrence.
Still playing their part, though. I mean, I can see what he was saying. Let's talk to our Home and Security editor, Mark White. I mean, it all begs the question, Mark, what our capabilities are, of course, but then how much of a role we should be playing in this sort of escalation.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous situation that the UK, the US and other potential Western allies of Israel could find themselves in, because you remember, of course, when Iran first launched missiles, some ballistic missiles, other cruise missiles and drones at Israel in April of this year. The UK and the US intervened then, shooting down significant numbers of these munitions as they came over. over. But Ben Wallace has got a point in terms of our capabilities, because with these RAF Typhoons that were up in the latest missile barrage, they couldn't shoot down ballistic missiles. Those Typhoons don't have that capability, because with ballistic missiles, they're going way, way up into the upper reaches of the atmosphere and then coming down in the terminal phase very quickly. It's not a capability that a Typhoon has to be able to take out a ballistic missile. The last time round, there were cruise missiles as well and drones, so the Typhoon aircraft could play a more meaningful role. So there are limits to what they can do, but regardless, it is concerning to many people that the UK military may be sucked in to this conflict if it widens in the Middle East, because where do you draw the line? At the moment, they can argue, and Keir Starmer is arguing, that, you know, to defend Israel is what the British military are doing, and shooting objects deliberately fired at Israel. But what happens if Iran, for instance, decides to launch aircraft towards Israel? Do UK warplanes shoot down those aircraft with Iranian service personnel inside? If there are launch sites, as there are, from aligned groups in Syria and Iraq, do UK forces take them out and then also potentially lead to loss of life in that circumstance? You can see where we're going with this, but it is a concern that we are potentially being sucked into yet another costly, long war in the Middle East.
And that's what many people, Mark, listening to you, will be very concerned about. They'll be asking, why does Britain need to play a huge role, a leading role, if you like, in world events? Shouldn't we be focusing on our own country and our own people?
Well, it's a legitimate question, but this is where we are. Successive governments have always been a key ally of Israel. The US, much more so. They have very significant connections, of course, right across the US, with many Israeli citizens in all sectors of society there in that country. There is a very strong Israeli lobby in the US. And you're looking now, of course, at live pictures over Beirut as yet more airstrikes have taken place. One building in particular was targeted in Beirut last night, killing 6 people. Now, Israeli sources have suggested that they had targeted a senior Hezbollah commander inside that building. We await word from the Israeli military as to who that target was.
Can I ask you what we are expecting, if we can even predict these things, what the Israeli response will be now? We've heard President Biden speaking, warning the Israelis that he's not going to support any bombing of nuclear facilities inside Iran. Is that what we could be looking at next, Mark?
Well, potentially, Israel is a sovereign state, and if it decides that actually this is an opportune moment to go after nuclear facilities, it may well do that regardless. It has ignored some of the pleas. You remember, of course, back after the Iranian missile strikes in April, Joe Biden was telling Benjamin Netanyahu, take the win. We shot down pretty much all of these missiles with the help of the US and the UK and some other allies in the region. Take the win. But Benjamin Netanyahu didn't listen to that. There was still a strike, but a reasonably limited strike that Iran could live with. It is believed that this time round the strike, and we're hearing this from Israeli politicians and military leaders, could be of a magnitude much greater than that strike that was launched after the April ballistic missile attacks.
Mark, for now, thank you. Now, the Labour peer at the centre of the donation scandal is under investigation by the House of Lords standards watchdog.
Yes, Lord Wahid Ali is set to face a probe over what is being called alleged non-registration of interests.
When asked about the donations, the Minister for Business and Trade, Sarah Jones, told us this.
Been a Lord for decades, and he's been very involved in trying to deliver a Labour government for a very long time. That's why he made the donations he did, because he wanted to deliver a Labour government. He was helping us do that. He had a pass for a very short period of time, and he doesn't have one anymore. He is not influencing any policy at all.
Well, a Labour spokesperson also told GB News that Lord Ellie will cooperate fully with the Lords Commissioner, and he's confident that all interests have been registered. We cannot comment further while this is ongoing.
Also this morning, Downing Street said Sir Keir Starmer has paid back more than £6,000 that he received since the election. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, is here. I do wonder about this paying the money back. I mean, it's difficult. He would have been very much criticised if he hadn't. However, the fact that he has makes it look like he's done something wrong.
Which caused all sorts of problems for other people, because what he's done so far, he's paid back £6,176 of gifts. That's 6 Taylor Swift concert tickets, 4 tickets to Donny races, and 1 clothing rental agreement for Lady Starmer. That's since he became Prime Minister. But then all the other ministers who also took freebies since then, including Angela Rayner, she claimed an £836 trip to Ibiza, where she's filmed in that disco box. Stephen, you might know what one of those is, you know, dancing around. But the point is, others now have to come out and probably pay theirs back if they don't. And also, he's saying it's a judgment issue. Well, why is it not right? Why is it right to pay it back now? What about all the £40,000 worth of specs and suits and things you received before you were Prime Minister? Isn't that the same thing?
I mean, we had a viewer email in earlier, and it's a good point, isn't it? Saying that, look, we know that no rules were broken. That's not the point. It's the hypocrisy that's the problem. And no giving the money back now is going to change that.
No, maybe not. The hypocrisy, I suppose, is that he was attacking the Tories for similar free wallpaper for Boris Johnson and the like, so that's the hypocrisy she may be talking about there. But there's new guidance being drawn up. It looks awkward. I don't know why they can't find a new topic to talk about. This is a government, in our world, we see above the waterline, above on the iceberg. They see everything coming up. Why not bring in a new bit of news to stop us talking about their freebies, but they can't. I don't know why not.
No, I mean, it'd be interesting. I mean, the problem is people like us wouldn't want to let go.
We wouldn't let go, but equally we'd also have to discuss other things on their agenda. Instead, they're always on the defensive. I mean, you went to see Ursula von der Leyen in the EU yesterday, and this information dropped just before the press conference. That dominated the question and answer. It's off, you know, it diverts the attention away from what they're talking about.
What I don't understand with all of this, I mean, everyone has teething troubles when they get into government, but it's just such basic errors. I mean, this is a basic error. The fact that Angela Rayner's now got a personal photographer who is the same person she criticised for working for Boris Johnson, calling it a vanity project, and now she's got the same thing. I mean, how did they not realise this is going to be picked up on?
Maybe they thought that the attacks when the Tories were in charge were just free hits on the government, and there's no long-term problem for that. There were similarities. I've been had 4 weeks away at these various conferences, and it seems to me there are similarities between Labour and the Tories in this way. In the 2019 election, when the Tories won, they won on the promise of stopping Corbyn and delivering Brexit. Corbyn was stopped on day one, and then Brexit within 40 days, and then not much. They ran out of ideas almost, didn't feel they led the agenda. This government appears to have come in to get rid of the Tories. That happened on day one. And then what? It feels like they're sort of drifting around looking for a narrative.
Yeah, and then the narrative is doom and gloom, which isn't helping either. Can I ask you about Lord Wahid Ali? Because he's now under investigation, isn't he? Under a non-registration of interests. What's happening here? We don't know. And we're not clear. The reports today in the Telegraph and elsewhere is not to do with the money in the past he got for the House of Commons and the loans and things to the Tory leadership, Labour leadership. It might be that it was just focused on him as revealed a different issue. We don't know what it is, but it is another problem for them. And it's not going anywhere, is it? It's not going anywhere. I mean, I'm just back from the Tory party conference. I mean, that is going somewhere. We'll go down from 4 candidates to 2 next week. But it looks like James Cleverly, the former chairman, has momentum. I think maybe we're seeing Tom Tugendhat fade away. I had all this tat to bring, left it at home. Fake tan from Tugendhat, Tugendhat's T-shirts. You would have liked that, I'd say.
I mean, I'm quite intrigued by the fact that, because Cleverly, with his speech, some people branded it quite arrogant. He had a real go at reform, which some people say is that going to alienate some voters, perhaps. And yet, again, put that against Badenoch, who, like her or not, is seen as very popular within the party.
Yes.
So how does all that balance out?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think in the hall, there's no question that James Cleverly won. He's a former party chairman. He pushes the right buttons. For GB News, I interviewed a dozen people leaving the hall. 10 were for Cleverly. Many had switched sides from the other 3 candidates. He was impressive in the hall. I'm not sure on the TV it worked, and the arrogance you're suggesting may have come from people watching it on TV, where most members are watching it, let's face it. There was a More in Common focus group last night. They thought they were discussing their reaction to it. That's a group of people chatting about politics with being filmed by other people. And they struck me, they liked Kemi Badenoch, who kind of punches through the lens and connects with the viewer in an authentic way, which maybe the others don't. But it's all to play for. And the second favourite, of course, now is Robert Jenrick.
And do you think that could be the final 2 then, James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick, or is it still too close to call?
Well, for me, I think Tugendhat drops out next week, first round, and then we're going to see the votes go from Mel Stride, who went last time, and Tugendhat go to Cleverly. So it's Cleverly versus Badenoch or Jenrick.
OK.
Right. Christopher, we'll hold you to that, you know. Thank you very much indeed.
And we've still got another month to go.
Yes,
would
we
you
have.
believe? Now, some good news this morning. You've still got plenty of time to grab an autumn cash boost, an incredible £36,000 in cash.
Yeah, it's our biggest cash prize of the year so far. It could all be yours, every single tax-free penny. Here's how.
Test demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yeah, next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Bourne, thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts of forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. Now, the Princess of Wales has returned to royal duties as she's been pictured hugging a teenage girl battling cancer.
Yeah, the Waleses met the aspiring photographer. Now, she's got an aggressive form of the disease. It was at a ceremony for sporting heroes.
Well, we're joined now by royal broadcaster and photographer Helena Chard. Good to see you this morning, Helena, and how wonderful to see the Princess of Wales back to work with a hug.
Absolutely. I mean, so heartwarming and so much going on in the world at the moment. So it's so good to see this, such a lovely moment, full of love. They're really, really beautiful. And as we know, the Princess of Wales and obviously Prince William and family know only too well what it's like to go through a situation, especially with youngsters in the family with cancer. And I mean, to give this love and to give this opportunity, it's a pep to the family, obviously a pep to her. I just love the fact as well that she's an aspiring photographer, the young girl. As we know, the Princess of Wales is patron of the Royal Photographic Society. So meeting them and her taking these wonderful pictures of at the investiture of people receiving their honours. What a special time. Prince William, I believe, invited her, and he'd found out about this by the Air Ambulance charity, obviously, that he's patron of. He's been helping raise loads of monies recently. But how lovely. It's like the big love. And we've been waiting, anticipating, well, me, myself, to Princess Catherine to show various things, her big smile, which to me is always amazing. So, and we're seeing her in more and more events, which is something that she said that she would do, which is lovely. I think on another point as well, which it's so inspiring to see young people and to give them a platform in general. But I also feel it's something that I've always talked about, to be able to give young people a chance to get into photography. What a wonderful way to do it. And I can see this being rolled out somehow. But I'm sure Liz Hatton, as we know on her social media, she was so excited. It's going to have given her a pep.
Absolutely.
To not only have met her, but to photograph these people. She said how kind, warm and lovely they are. I mean, there's always social media being saying various things.
As kind, warm and lovely as you are, we've got to leave it there because we're running out of time, but really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And Andrew and Bev have never been described as kind and lovely.
Oh,
but they are here.
True.
What's coming up in the show?
We have got two amazing men in the studio with us this morning. They should be given more attention than they are, but these are the veterans who undertook the atomic testing.
Oh, wow.
More than 22,000 of them for the British and American troops. And we've got amazing Alan here, who is organised. He's the son of one of the veterans, Alan Owen, and he founded Lab Rats International. They're trying to raise money. They want a holiday. They want a holiday. All they need is £25,000 to take the remaining vets on holiday.
They deserve some compensation too, because many of them endured terrible health problems.
They do.
And of course, trouble is they're getting old. Some of them are dying.
Yeah, and all the analysis of the Tory conference from which Andrew has just returned.
Yes.
That and lots more.
OK, thanks both. We'll see you then.
We're back tomorrow. See you then.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following all the wet weather that central and southern parts of the UK have seen since mid-September, it's a case of make the most of today. Widely fine, sunny spells up and down the country and feeling pleasant in that early October sunshine. Just the chance of some patchy cloud and the odd shower into the far south-east and perhaps the far northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, it's a perfect October day. Sunny spells and staying dry for the vast majority, and highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, feeling perfectly pleasant. It's not going to last. More rain is coming along for the weekend, so certainly make the most of the fine weather that most of us experience on Thursday and into tomorrow as well. North East Scotland, blue skies as we end the day. Just some high cloud drifting into central and western parts and some patchy medium-level cloud through the central belt. Northern Ireland, some thickening of the cloud in the far west, a sign of things to come later in the week. But for much of England and Wales, the cloud tending to melt away into the evening. Widely clear skies forming and winds turning even lighter as the night goes on. As a result, temperatures are going to fall away. Relatively fresh night to come. Not too chilly, but certainly temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures in some sheltered spots by the time we wake up on Friday. A contrast, though, for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Here, we start the day with thicker cloud and the first signs of that change I mentioned, with some outbreaks of mostly light rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland, the Western Isles as well. This system is very slow moving, though, so it mostly remains in the far northwest through Friday. Elsewhere, plenty of dry and bright weather, a bit more cloud about, but otherwise feeling perfectly pleasant with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius. More wet weather, I'm afraid, through the weekend and early next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Dumfries and Galloway, the A75 is blocked by an accident at Springham, affecting traffic each way between Castle Douglas and Dumfries. In County Durham on the A19, there's a lane closed southbound after an accident between Castle Eden Interchange and the Sheraton Junction, with queues towards there taking 20 minutes from the Peterlee roundabout. In Lancashire, Squiresgate Lane is closed by Blackpool Airport for an investigation. On the M65 in Lancashire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between Junction 6 and 5 from Blackburn to Guide, with queues from Junction 7 at Accrington. In Leicestershire, the A563 is partly blocked by an accident on Glen Hills Way at Glenparva in Leicester, causing queues. In Northamptonshire, Wellingborough Road in Rushden is closed eastbound after an accident, and on the M26 in Kent is taking 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
He's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Having a child, is it maybe?